I struggled with anxiety for 30 years. I took Zoloft for 2.5 decades, and it was a life changer. But it wasn't until I understood my nervous system's role in this and the default beat down negative critic and how that keeps your anxiety alive and how you can use high five habits to regulate your nervous system, which is critical because remember, when your nervous system is on edge and when your nervous system is what psychologists call dysregulated, or you have a trauma response programmed into your nervous system, and let's be honest, every single one of us has experienced trauma on some level.
Yeah.
And after these last 18 months, everybody's nervous system is at a on edge setting.
Yeah.
Are we masks? Are we not masks? Are we in quarantine? Are we not? Are the kids going back to school? Are they not going back to school? Are we getting on planes? Are we not getting on planes? Am I allowed to leave the country? Can I not? Like you're constantly in this state of uncertainty. So I want you to take a second habit that is going to help tremendously with anxiety. It also helps with focus, and I'll explain how in a minute. So I call this habit, and we write about it and explain the science behind it in this book, The High Five Habit. It's called high-fiving your heart. And here's how you're going to do it. So high-fiving your heart is a way to take advantage of your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve, as you know, you talk about this, runs from your seat all the way to the top of your head. It goes through every major organ. It goes through your vocal cords. Your vagus nerve is literally a treasure that you need to discover. It is the on-off switch that helps you switch between your sympathetic, which is your on-edge, anxiety-ridden, stressed out, dysregulated nervous system, and the switch to a calm, cool, grounded nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system. So what you can do every single morning, and I do this right when I get out of bed. So the alarm rings, I use the 5-second rule, I count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that helps me get out of bed. I move on one, and mornings are always hard for me. I hate getting out of bed. I love how cozy the bed is. If I were left to my own devices, Fern, I would lay in bed and I would stare at the ceiling and I would think about all the what ifs that could go wrong today. And I would slowly become a human pot roast marinating in fear, and anxiety and panic and overwhelm and depression would pin me to that bed like a gravity blanket. And I would lay there for hours. That's what I do when I'm in distress. I love to just soak up all that anxiety. So I get out of bed. That's really important for me. Then I make my bed. And then I do this thing where I take my hands, and I got these big mitts. So I, like put them right in the center of my chest, but you want to get it right. Make sure your hands are touching your heart because your vagus nerve runs through your heart, and you're going to press against your chest. This is high-fiving your heart. And then you're going to take a deep breath. And then you're going to say these 3 sentences. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. And you're going to repeat those sentences over and over and over again. And what's going to happen is wild. You are going to feel your nervous system calm down. You're going to feel yourself, like your being, come back into your body. I call this body confidence. It's being comfortable, literally comfortable in your own skin. And I do this first thing in the morning for a very important reason. First of all, this was new research to me, but I talked to this amazing expert in neuroscience called her name's Dr. Judy Willis. She was at UCLA for a long time, and she's been researching forever the connection between your nervous system and your brain's ability to learn new information. And her research shows that when your nervous system is on edge, which everybody's is, you're waiting for the next shoe to drop, you feel nervous, you can't quite focus, you are having trouble sleeping, you're constantly having your mind wander, your breath is sort of shallow. Everybody feels this way right now because of our shared experience and what we're living through. When your nervous system is in that state, it is impossible for the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that you use when you're learning new behavior or when you're really focusing on something, it's impossible for it to engage. And, I can explain this. Like if somebody were to come running into your room right now and scream, the house is on fire, the house is on fire. First of all, your nervous system would go into a state of being on edge, and it would go into alarm mode to alert you. But you wouldn't be able to do a math problem in that moment because your nervous system is taken over. And so if you're struggling with focus right now, and who isn't, if you're constantly trapped in that what if loop where you're worried, and you can't bring your attention to something optimistic or positive, if you're having trouble feeling like you're in control, I want you to also add into your morning routine this high five to your heart, because I want you to settle into your body and I want you to activate your vagus nerve. Because if you can start your day with a calm and cool nervous system, you've got a fighting chance to not only stay in control, but to make progress on something that matters, to not be so reactive to everything going on around you and to feel like your emotions are going to hijack you. And then when you walk into the bathroom and you brush your teeth and you have this moment with yourself, your brain is now ready to think about the day ahead and to think about it in an optimistic way and to think about how you want to show up and to work for you. See, what I love about all these tools that I've uncovered just by, dumb luck and by being at a bottom moment in my own life is that there's so much about the way your body's trying to help you, your vagus nerve, the fact that the filter in your brain, the RAS, can actually change in real time and filter how it sees the world when you use these tools I'm teaching you, the fact that your subconscious mind is already programmed with all the positive association with the high five, the fact that your nervous system recognizes raising your hands as celebratory. This is your body, your nervous system, your mind trying to help you be happy, help you be positive, help you get back to the state that you were frankly born in.
I'm super excited to now introduce my community to your work. So talk to me, tell me, I know you came a long way from the first book, The 5-Second Rule. So what kind of got you thinking in this direction? What inspired this new piece of work you've now put out?
Well, I feel like, and your book opens with a face plant into the oatmeal, right? Like that, both of us, the dark night of the soul, I think, is sort of what brought me to this work. I have, for better or for worse, always either fallen into a hole or I've dug one for myself. And the result of a lot of the work that I've shared that has really resonated is the result of needing to figure out how to build a ladder to climb out of a hole that I have found myself in or dug for myself. And, the 5-second rule, which I put out 5 years ago after, of course, a profound breakdown in my life, and has gone on to impact millions of people's lives. And I'm super proud of the fact that it's had a huge impact in people's mental health, and clinicians around the world use it. We had a whole group of inpatient nurses show up at the talk show I was hosting to tell me that of all the tools that they have inpatient when they discharge somebody, the 5-second rule is the most powerful one they've got because it's simple and it's easy to remember. And when you're somebody that has cascading thoughts that put you in a very dark place, counting backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is an incredibly powerful tool. And, even knowing, Dr. Nicole, that more than 111 people have stopped themselves from attempting suicide by using the 5-second rule, I'm going to stand here right now and tell you that I personally feel that the high five habit and the tools that I share in this book that have such a profound overlap with the same tools that you're sharing with your community and with the world at large, this is going to be 100 times more profound. Because the 5-second rule will help you interrupt patterns. The 5-second rule will certainly help you push through emotions, feelings, triggers, trauma that can hold you back or make you feel paralyzed. But it doesn't actually heal the deeper stuff that is causing you so much pain. And so back to your original question about how I came upon the high five habit is, I didn't sit down and say, okay, it's been 5 years, I better write a book with a 5 in it. That would have been wonderful. I literally just woke up with a really familiar feeling in April of 2020. And the feeling is one that, you know, we all have experienced in our lives, and we're all going to experience again. It's that feeling of being completely disconnected from yourself. It's feeling completely overwhelmed by your life. It's feeling emotionally depleted, and just absolutely exhausted by the demands coming at you and the just overwhelming amount of stuff to do. And so on one particular morning, and I'll tell you kind of the 2 days in this story that I think will really resonate with you, and I would love at any moment for you to stop and help me unpack this. But what happened is I woke up, and, you know, the worst place in the world for me is to lie in bed. You know, being a victim, you know, of sexual trauma, having been molested at the age of, you know, 8 in 4th grade, waking up from a sound sleep to having a kid on top of me, that moment of trauma, even though on the scale of what could happen to you, it was a one-off incident. It wasn't really scary. It was confusing. I immediately disassociated. I think that one experience locked into my nervous system 2 things: anxiety and disassociation as a response to any kind of unnerving moment. And the second thing it locked into place is that for the next, oh boy, I don't know, 42 years, the first thing I felt when I woke up every morning was something's wrong. And I realize now that was probably a trauma response to the things I experienced in childhood.
Yeah.
And right?
Yeah, the first reaction I was having and hearing in bed in particular, right? The intimacy of being in bed. In bed for many of us is where our thoughts, you know, kind of get the best of us and our minds run, whether it's right before we go to sleep or when we arise in the morning. And I had anticipated you were going to talk about that aspect of it. So when you compound the intimacy of bed and sleep and the safety, if we don't feel safe, we can't even drift off to sleep. And again, oftentimes our mind runs. So if you compound that with a trauma, with a violation then in that intimate space of your bedroom where one is needs to be safe, then of course, I can't imagine the impact that you carried even outside of your awareness. When you say dissociation, a lot of us disconnect. When things like that happen, when we're too young, it's too overwhelming, it's too confusing. We don't have the support around us to make sense of it. We leave. However, it doesn't mean it leaves us. And for many of us, even waking in the morning, it's when our cortisol is the highest. Again, we have those racing thoughts. We have the whole day ahead of us, whatever that might bring. And then again, if for you, you were awoken in the middle of the night with something so violating, I can't even imagine what bed was for you. Even if you weren't fully aware of it, it was still living in your body, in your emotion, and in your spirit.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, the next morning when I went downstairs, because we were at this kind of like a big family trip, lots of families there, all the kids in a bunk room. When I got downstairs, my mom was cooking with all the moms, and she turned around and she goes, "How'd you sleep?" And I immediately wanted to tell her. And here's the interesting thing. I wasn't nervous about my mom's reaction because she's a farm gal. I knew she would take that spatula and probably, you know, clock the kid into next week. Like there would be, stuff would go down. I would all of a sudden froze because the kid, I could see him out of the corner of my eye. And I didn't know what he would do. And that was the moment that I locked a coping mechanism triggered by trauma into my being. And that is, the second you're worried about a reaction, lie. Just say what you think is going to make the situation okay. And so I did. I said, fine. And it wasn't until probably 20 years later that I actually consciously remembered this, or that I literally started talking about it. And then I spent another couple decades trying to unwind the trauma and link it all together. And I can really take it back probably even further, but that was really a defining moment for me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you first and foremost. I should have thanked you before I kind of entered in there, but for sharing something so vulnerable. I know how difficult for some of us coming to that truth ourselves, right? Having that, I'm even watching some comments, a couple people on this live right now are having light bulb moments, it's really hard to look at our past experiences with such raw honesty, because then along with it comes all of the feelings we have about everything that happened and everything that didn't happen to us. So I really want to honor that. And I have a question for you, because you said something earlier, and I'm interested on how these two connect, and then of course how they connect to the high five habit and the new tool. When you talked about I fall into holes, right, or I create them, you said something along that language. Yeah. So how, in your opinion, does that pivotal moment, this tendency to lie, to continue, I'm sure, to remain disconnected from your authentic truth? Because I know a lot of us, and I say this on the heels actually of recording a podcast myself on self-sabotage. Oh, right. So talk to me about falling into those holes and how you believe these two, obviously that pivotal moment and all of the coping that had happened, the onion, if you will, led you to creating those holes. And of course, now finding your way out of it through this amazing new tool.
Well, you know, it's so interesting that we're starting here, and it's actually perfect, because I can say now, being on the side of it, and particularly now that I've done EMDR, psychedelic guided modalities, I've gone headfirst into healing trauma. It's part of my day-to-day life to understand my trauma, to be compassionate with it, to heal it, to take care of myself. The high five habit has been extraordinary in that regard. We're going to get to it in a minute, but I want to try to be as careful as possible, because I really get like viscerally like angry when I hear people talk about how, you know, you're responsible for everything. Because I don't fundamentally believe that. I feel I can see that because of things that happened to me, especially things that weren't my fault, whether that's the womb that you were, in, or your mother's dysregulation because she was a young teen mom like mine, away from her family and on edge, whether you were in a household with addiction or mental illness or abandonment or whatever, like none of that stuff's your fault. But I can now see how my own coping mechanisms, just because I didn't know any better, were the things that kept digging holes in my life. The constant insecurity and trauma response that led me to always be worried about what other people thought, always felt that it was my job to keep the peace, always one step ahead of everybody to make sure I didn't get hurt. And I think a lot of even me and the pace that I've lived at comes from sleeping and waking up to something like that. And so there's been this experience for me that I'm now realizing that it was deeply internalized. If I'm moving, you can't catch me. Right. And if I'm one step ahead of you, I can think about how to be manipulative. Well, I am being manipulative because I'm trying to manage your reaction to things. But it was all coming from a deep place of pain and coping mechanisms that my little fourth grade brain grabbed in the moment. And so, yeah, I take full responsibility for the shit that I did. And whether it was cheating on boyfriends, or it was the amount of alcohol and addiction that I struggled with at times in my life, whether it was just awful, gross, jealous, catty, comparison kind of behavior, whether it was squandering I mean, where do you want to go? I mean, if I started to like tell you what I used to be like, you'd feel like, Mel Robbins, woo, girl, holy cow. I guess. And it's a lot of it's in the book. I mean, like you, the anxiety was so profound. I have very, very few memories from basically 35 years until about 8 years. And that was even while I was medicated on Zoloft. And I've only come to start to understand how one coping mechanism when you're in the fourth grade can spin out of control and become an entire pattern that controls your life. And you're so unaware that lying is a way of life and people pleasing is a way of life, and looking outside yourself for validation and for love and for support is a way of life. And your work and this new high five habit and the process of writing it and the process of studying it and the process of uncovering all this research has truly been a pathway back home. Like I literally feel like that's what this is about. And I know you've experienced this. I know people in this community have experienced this. You know, there's tremendous contentment and joy when you finally come back home to yourself and you reconnect with yourself. There's also a lot of sadness because you realize for just how long you have been disconnected from attacking, loathing, criticizing. And I think one of the reasons why this book is exploding so quickly, just like your work has, is because it's hitting something that's foundational for every human being.
I think you're really beautifully illustrating it when you say those words, come back home, right? We all, and I think a lot of listeners have heard this idea of, you know, where's my authentic self, this intuition? How do I know my guidance? I think a lot of us do have this belief that it's for somewhere outside, or we can acquire it, and ultimately, I always use that onion analogy because that's how I feel it is. You peel back those layers and that home is within you. One of two things happen. We either become so disconnected that we can't even hear ourselves, or the little we hear ourselves, we've learned not to trust ourselves. And it's through those adaptations that you're very beautifully illustrating, whether it's the people pleasing. I'm seeing a ton of listeners resonating with people pleasing, that hypervigilance, that always trying to keep the peace. And then let's extend it further, because I would go as far to say, especially here in Western culture, some of that, when it turns into personality, gets rewarded. When we become the overachiever, the busy person, the person who actually can't stop, won't stop, right? And there's a lot of external validation that we can then acquire by moving, by plowing through our goals, and by keeping ourselves busy and disconnected. And I think what's important, and I think I'm watching a lot of listeners here unpacking their own trauma, really realizing that is coming from a place. Yeah. That it's coming usually from a wounded place. And it was our best attempt. Like you said, back my fourth grade self, that was the best I could do. And I say that speaking to all the shame that I know so many of us carry, whether or not we're aware of it or not. Every time we don't trust ourselves, every time we negate our own reality, every time we do look outside for someone else's truth that's more valuable than our own, we're continuing to erode that feeling of self, that self-trust. And it does then look like a really critical pit that so many of us are living around. And then we become, and I love how you weave in the science throughout the book, we become a self-validating machine.
Totally.
So talk to me a little bit about, kind of what you've learned in terms of how we keep ourselves locked in these
this
cycles.
Is incredible. It's incredible. So the morning that I discovered this thing, I'll kind of unpack this, because the first morning and the second morning, I know that you're going to take this like, boom, even deeper. So here we go, everybody, buckle up. So it's April 2020. And, I can't use my normal coping mechanisms. We're all in quarantine. So as I lose my dream job and my kids' college experience implode, and they're grieving and upset and sad, and I'm terrified for I'm scared for everybody and the frontline workers, and life is upside down, and the anxiety starts to kind of roll back in. I can't run to Target. I can't go to the coffee shop. I can't distract myself by running to do a speech. I can't go see my friends. All of the busyness, by the way, which I now can see was a form of self-regulating stress and trauma. That if I'm on the run, I don't have to deal with the woman in the mirror. If I'm moving and the adrenaline is pumping, I don't actually have to sit and be with myself. Maybe I can just outrun this stuff. And so and even the genesis of the 5-second rule, the genesis was, if I move fast enough, if I launch myself out of that bed, maybe I won't be there when the anxiety hits. So even that was like a perfect illustration of just push through it, don't deal with it. It's a fast thing that has profound effect, but it doesn't hit the source of what's causing all of the hatred and the tension and the pain in the first place. So I get out of bed, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I make my bed that morning so I don't crawl back into it. I feel exhausted, overwhelmed. We've all felt this before, whether you felt it during the pandemic or you felt it because you lost a job or somebody just says, I don't love you anymore, or you hate how you look. We've all felt this. I'm overwhelmed by my life. I'm exhausted. I can't face this. I get into the bathroom. I start brushing my teeth, and I immediately catch a glimpse of myself. And I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And then the habit starts that I really want us to unpack. Because every single human being I'm discovering has a habit that is so destructive and none of us are talking about because it's so subtle and it is so hard baked into your mind. And it's this. Every morning in the bathroom mirror, you either ignore yourself, which is a form of rejection, or you pick yourself apart and see all the things you need to fix or what you don't like. And this isn't, this is everybody. 50% of people are uncomfortable or will not look at themselves in the mirror.
I'll admit, I raised my hand. Took me a very long time to really, truly, and there's still discomfort there of looking at myself. And I used to tell myself, well, it's okay. I know how I feel in my body, and that's my marker. I feel good today, and that's all I need. I don't need to look at that mirror. Not really understanding that I was in that act of avoidance. Something felt very intimate, very vulnerable. Before I even got to then the criticism of myself, it just was for me pure avoidance. I didn't really care. I mean, I would need mirrors if I maybe put some makeup on. And outside of that, me and mirrors, I didn't have a relationship with them at all. Not knowing, again, I told myself the story of why I believed I wasn't looking at them until I dove down and unpacked it and understood that there was a discomfort there and still, like I said, remains for me.
Well, same for me. So I start picking myself apart. I feel my energy going down. And, the interesting thing, as I felt myself just getting so defeated, why'd you get up late? You haven't texted Nicole back. The dog's not walked. I'm just dragging. And all the research around emotional contagion. So do I. That this emotion and negative space is going to impact your productivity. We know all this, but it's a habit. I've been doing this for 4 decades is how long I've been doing this as part of my morning routine. And so if you had walked in the bathroom that morning, I would have spun on a dime. I'd have been like, Nicole, I know this is terrible. I'm so sorry you're going through this. You don't deserve this. But if anybody can face this, you can. What do you need? I would have lifted you up. I could not think of a thing to say. And here's the thing, I wouldn't have even believed it because it didn't match how I was feeling. And I don't know what came over. I honestly believe it was the universe, the divine source saying, all right, we're ready for this. Because it is so cheesy on its face. I'm literally in my underwear, alone with the dog at my feet, literally having the dark night of the soul. And I lift my hand to my tired reflection because the woman in the mirror needed a high five. And in that moment, lightning didn't strike. It wasn't like the heavens opened and, purple light came in and whoa, that's not what happened. As you know, too, you kind of have this awakening and then it's like, now what? No, but I felt this shift and I can explain the science. It's crazy. I felt this shift and the energy wasn't lovely. The energy was more like, oh, come on. I laugh. Oh, Mel, come on. It's like, get out there. You're safe, you're fine. I kind of shoved myself. I didn't even think, I didn't say it. It was a shift. But Nicole, holy cow, the second morning, this is when my healing took a quantum leap. I can't even wait till you guys hear this. I cannot wait for everybody to experience this. I wake up, same overwhelm, same just defeated, down, tired, anxious, stressed, alone. And I, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed. I make the bed. I start walking to the bathroom. And I realize I am feeling something I don't think I'd ever felt in my entire adult life. And it was this. You know how when you're about to walk into a cafe and you're going to see somebody you just love, you like them so much, you're about to walk in. What do you feel?
I mean, anything from, excitement to even that warm love, I think that you are expecting to go and receive in that moment.
Yeah. I actually felt that about seeing myself.
How powerful.
I had never felt that as an adult. I'd been excited to see an outfit or what my hair looked like, but I had never felt that sense of joy or excitement about seeing the human being, Mel Robbins.
The being, right? Because I'm thinking too, I'm like, what? I just went down a trip of what have I felt excited about? And if I were to categorize, it was the stuff I was doing, I would say, or or even an event. It didn't have to even be an accomplishment. As I began to heal, as I began to shift a little less into I have to achieve things, it would just still be an exciting experience I had planned coming up. And I'm having a really hard time having consistent or frequent memories of just me being enough. And for me, if I map it on back into childhood, one of my major copings too was that doing, was shifting from, right, a little girl self-expressing in whatever way to there were things that it was very clear I was good at very early on. And so for me, that shift into doing, and then the excitement, the warm feelings, even the loving connection, I could even go as far to say that my doingness, my achievements, my how I was in the world, actually for me for a long time was a point of connections for me in my family relationships, in my friendships. How can I serve you? How can I show up for you? Friend, partner, whomever. And so for me, it's hard to think of moments where I felt enough, excited, warm about me without action, uncloaked, just raw in a mirror.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And it goes back to something you said earlier. You also tend to get a lot of positive, emotion and praise when you're achieving those things. At least I did too. And I think that's why I chased it so much. I had fused the doing with being lovable, the achieving with being worthy. And so as I walk into the bathroom that second morning and the sort of profound nature of what was unfolding started to hit me, I have this second epiphany as I'm brushing my teeth. And that is this. Every morning, there are two people in the bathroom. There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror who needs you. They are trying so hard. They are waiting for you to wake up and to realize that they're there. They need your encouragement. They need your support. They need your love. They are so tired of you picking them apart and thinking about all the things that are going wrong. And as I put my toothbrush down, I remembered the fact that yesterday, the day before, I had been researching, how do I need to change right now? Because I have all these people on my team. How am I going to show up for my family? And I found this piece of research from Harvard that says that if you take just less than a minute of intentional reflection about how you're going to show up for the people that you're leading, and this could apply to your family, anybody, it changes your focus, your productivity, it changes your mood, it changes how you show up, your ability to impact. And for whatever reason in that moment, it all fused together. And I thought, well, what if I do that for me? And I asked myself a question I had never asked myself before. And it was this. Who do you need me to be today? Like I asked the woman in the mirror, who do you need me to be today? How can I show up for you? And, what kind of popped in my mind that morning was like, well, it'd be nice if you were kinder to me because I'm trying really hard. And then the next one was, it'd be great if you could muster up some optimism here. Having fun today. It's like, hell, throw me a lifeline, Mel. And as I thought about it, I then went and I raised my hand and I sealed it with this high five. And something like, it just felt like this fusion with the person in the mirror. And that's when I really got it. I got that this is so much deeper and more profound because what I'm actually doing is I'm fulfilling my fundamental emotional needs. I'm seeing myself. I am meeting myself where I am. I am affirming my unique need, and I am celebrating myself exactly where I am right now, whether it's challenging, whether it's exhilarating. I am with myself right in that moment in a way that I don't know if I had ever been.
I think it's really, pivotal. And I want to reiterate this because I think it's such a great point of understanding. Back to that onion analogy again, when you said there's two people, right? And I could go as far to say that so many of us have different masks, different selves, right? The core, like we were just talking about, is who we really are. Mm-hmm. Though so many times in our day to day, we are showing up in all of these different ways, playing all of these different roles. And there is an us that we need to, and the journey becomes about connecting back to. So a lot of us are kind of at odds with even ourselves in so many moments because we're so practiced at showing up in all of these other ways that we've lost so much sight of the authentic core within each of us. And what you're also illustrating, I think that's so important, is the practice of that reconnection, right? And many of us start by not knowing, not seeing ourselves, not knowing what there is even to see or to self-express. For me, I share this story often. When I came to the awareness that I, like you and like many of us, filter the whole world through everyone else and what their needs may be, I had a big gaping hole of knowledge. I didn't know myself. I didn't really know that person in the mirror. I did know that we do, I believe, as humans universally, I don't care where you're signing onto this live right now around the globe, we have at our core the desire to be seen, to be heard, to be just in full self-expression, and for that to be enough. Yet I didn't know who that person was. So I share this because I do want to speak to the people who, as we begin to look in the mirror, and for a lot of us, it might just be a concept. Okay, there's an authentic self in there where I don't know where that person is. I don't know what that person needs yet. And that's when we begin the journey to explore. Because I, like many of us, didn't know at first, was profoundly uncomfortable with even beginning to ask those questions. What do I need right now? Can I just be enough in this moment? And it is the question that sets us off into the journey. And I share that because I know a lot of us, we want to know the answers, or we think we should, and then we shame ourselves out of even taking the journey into exploring those. But for me, I'll share, that's how my journey began. Not knowing at all, with incredible discomfort, even around stopping to even ask myself those questions. And of course, like you said, it does not happen overnight. I say there's no light switch here. Oh, I heal now. And again, I want to highlight the practice of it, right? Because there's concepts, there's books, there's, people and teachers and tools and techniques, and they're all in theory until, like I say, we bridge the gap from theory into action. And that's what I've always resonated so much with your work, from the 5 second, this idea of the tool. How do I practically apply this? And now, of course, the high five habit. How do I turn this idea into a daily action that can actually help me create the change that I'm looking for, to A, reconnect with that person beneath, and B, to over time, grow to love them. Over time, grow to love them.
I love the over time. Now, here's how I'll unpack the experience of doing this, because we've now studied it for a year. The science is so incredible about what we're going to teach you to do, because we're going to teach you to take programming that is already in your subconscious brain and already stored in your nervous system, and you've been giving it to other people. I'm going to teach you for free how to aim it back at yourself and benefit from it. This is bananas. And in fact, Dr. Nicole, some of this stuff I only learned 2 weeks ago, and it's not even in the book, because I spent a couple hours with Dr. Daniel Amen. He went crazy over this and explained a bunch of things that I didn't even understand using science. So wait till you all hear this. So when you do this, I want you to start this practice right after you brush your teeth, because as you talk about a lot, as the research shows, if you stack something new, something very, very small, you're more likely to be successful in remembering to do it. And if it's tiny and small, it's in your work. It's a simple promise that you can keep. And when you keep your word to yourself, it's how you mend the years of betraying yourself. And so this stacks really beautifully in with all the stuff that Dr. Nicole has suggested that you think about when you start making and keeping simple promises. So we're going to brush our teeth, right? Because we got to get the gunk out of our mouth. We don't want to spread dragon breath all over everybody. Let's also then use the high five habit, and let's get the gunk out of our mind, body, and spirit so that we're not spreading all of that into the world. Now, there's a couple things that you're going to experience when you first try this. I would expect that, a lot of you listening may not feel weird doing it, but everybody feels like, okay, really? Like, this is kind of weird. I mean, I know I'm watching you too, but even for you too, this is a little strange. So, I get it. It's okay. I'm going to explain neurologically why you're going to think it's weird. The reason why you think it's weird immediately is because you have the opposite habit of rejecting or criticizing yourself as part of your morning routine right now. So if I were to lose this arm, my right hand, and I have to suddenly write with my left hand, my opposite hand, it's going to feel weird because it's new. That's great news. That just means your brain is learning something new, okay? So expect it to feel a little funky. Second thing is, you're only going to have one of two reactions to this. It's either really positive. So you go to raise your hand and you'll start laughing. A lot of people do that because it is kind of funny the first time you do it. But that's also because every time you have ever received or given a high five to somebody else, your brain drips dopamine. So Dr. Amen was also telling me the reason why you feel a boost in your mood after you do it is because your brain releases dopamine. Your brain doesn't know the difference between high-fiving somebody else and you high-fiving yourself. It gives you the exact same response in your own body that's already programmed in there whenever you high-five somebody else. The other reaction that's positive, and maybe you can help me unpack this, is we get a tremendous number of people, Dr. Nicole, who write to us and say, is it normal to burst into tears? And I think it's not only normal, I think it's beautiful, because I think it's an emotional, cathartic, spiritual release of you finally coming back home.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was posting a couple weeks ago, I think, about tears, crying, right? And all of the different emotions that are released in, the tear, the crying process. It's not just, I think traditionally we think of sadness and sad. The nervous system reaction behind the release, it can engulf and embody a ton of different feelings. And I think it highlights too, I talk a lot about our energetic being, describing emotions as physiological events and as energies in our body. So especially if you've resonated at the start of our talk with me and you sharing, I'm disconnected, I'm dissociated, I don't know how I feel, chances are, doesn't mean that you're not having those feelings. Chances are they're stuck, they're stagnant, and they're pent up inside of you. I will be the first to admit, when I began my healing journey, shortly after the bowl of oatmeal was just the beginning. I probably spent a good 3 to 6 months crying. And I'm not, historically, yes, I cry at moments. I'm not a hugely tearful person. I go as far as when I was dissociated, was not a hugely emotional person. Stress I had down. I knew how to be stressed, and I knew how to stress the world around me out. Any other feeling, though, right? If I were to drop in and be vulnerable, be sad, be angry, I would tell you I wasn't either of those things because all I really registered was stress. So that level of disconnection, right? There was so much feeling. And when I began my healing journey, I didn't even know why I was crying half the time. So the bowl of oatmeal story, for those of you who read my book, was one of many in moments of days even where tears were such a part, and I couldn't explain them. I didn't have words. If my partner Lolly at the time would have asked me, as she often did, what's wrong? Through tears, I don't know. I didn't really even have words, yet the release of crying for me was quite a consistent on the beginning of my journey. And that's how I understand it. All of those years of deep sadness, deep anger, deep wounding that I ran from, just like you, kept myself distracted from as I began to be, just a little more dropped in, a little more consciously aware of myself, and a little more safe because of the relationship that I was in and was creating for myself at the time. I was able to then blow the cap off, and out it came. So for me, I would say tears was such an important release for me to heal. That wasn't just tears of sadness all the time. A lot of times tears, like I said, have all different feelings pent up in them.
Yeah. Well, it's very common, and I think it's a really beautiful thing. And I loved, when you talked about the energetic thing, I immediately had this like feeling of almost like plugging a cord into a wall, and that there's this sort of energetic exchange when you come back home to yourself. And, people are writing to us about the delight that they're feeling. And so that's incredible. But the more likely experience is probably resistance. And I want to tell you the 3 sources of the resistance that we've identified. And there's probably even more, but I want you to know this is very, very common. First of all, for those of us that have experienced trauma or abuse or neglect or discrimination or poverty or all kinds of heartbreak, abandonment, anything that you have survived, a lot of us drag that into the bathroom every morning, and it stands between you and the person in the mirror. And you see it as evidence that the person you're staring at, if you'll even look at them, is damaged or unworthy or whatever you say, unlovable. And so the resistance is this deep-seated belief that because of those things that you've survived, you do not deserve the high five, which is where the resistance comes from. So I'm here to tell you, if that resonates for you, the high five is a beautiful thing because you don't need to say a word. You can feel all that resistance. That's okay. Because the physical gesture and the programming in your mind do all the work for you. And, if you have survived all those things in your life, you not only deserve a high five, you need one. And you need one to heal. Because, if you can think about the times where you have given or received a high five, Dr. Nicole, what does the gesture communicate whenever you give it to somebody?
I think high fives communicate acknowledgement, right? You see that person and you feel, I'm going to use some version of favorable. You're celebrating some aspect of what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like, I love you, I see you, I believe in you, keep going. If somebody's having a bad day, shake it off, you got this. And you've never in your entire life high-fived somebody and thought, I hate you, I hope you lose, you're the worst. You can't do it. Like, so if you can stand there and say that person in the mirror is unlovable, but the second that you raise your hand to high-five yourself, your brain takes over, and so does your nervous system, because they know what a high-five means. So it is impossible. Try it. Try it. You cannot high-five yourself and actually think something terrible about yourself, because your brain neurologically won't allow you because of the programming in there. It's like trying to sing the lyrics to a different song while Let It Be is playing. You can't do it. It's in your mind. And so the more that you make this a daily practice, what ends up happening is you silence the critic, and the programming associated with the high five starts to marry with your own reflection. Now, another thing that happens is, like, form of resistance is all the regrets that you have and the shame that you carry. So if you're human, you have done things that you deeply regret, whether it's cheating or lying or addiction or hurting others or hurting yourself, all stuff that you did, by the way, while you're trying to survive. Things that you would gladly forgive Dr. Nicole or Mel Robbins for, but you drag it into the bathroom every morning. And you use that as evidence, again, to see a person that is not worthy of celebration because of those things. This was actually a really big insight because of Chris, my husband. So when he got out of the restaurant business, the restaurants that he and his best friend opened ultimately shut down. And it was interesting to watch that happen, because when they shut down, his business partner looked at the 7-year experience and was like, it's restaurants, I'm really proud of what we did. We worked hard. We did a good job. Like, we were great employers. Like, we had a great product. Okay, whatever. Did we return the profit? Nope. Let's move on. My husband couldn't do it. He could not do it. He had the classic experience of shame. The restaurant failed. I'm a failure. I did not know, Dr. Nicole, how deep of a hole he had fallen into because of the masks that he was wearing, hiding his depression, probably not even present to the fact that he was experiencing depression. And then, of course, once he started to realize that's what it was, feeling like there was something broken, he has for 7 years stood next to me at the bathroom sink and looked in the mirror and seen a human being who's a failure. And when I first started doing this, and I said to him, you know, I think you should try this, Chris. Like, this has some crazy impact on me. I think this might help bring the light back in. And he said, the high-fiving yourself is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And as we unpacked what the stupid was, because I said, actually, Chris, I think the reason why you think it's stupid is because you don't think you deserve one. And that's the heart of the resistance. That you are standing in such profound judgment that you are refusing to give yourself the forgiveness and the acknowledgement and the support that you need to pivot and turn toward healing and moving your life in the direction you deserve to move it in. And what's great about the high five is you don't have to stand in front of the mirror and go, I'm great. You don't have to do that. And in fact, it wouldn't work because for years you've told yourself you're not. But the second, again, this is called neurobics. It's a whole field of neurological research. The second you apply that physical motion, your brain's programming takes over. It silences the beatdown and you go, this. And it doesn't mean, yeah. It actually is compassion. It says, I see you. Yeah, the last 7 years sucked. But I'm still here, and I still love you, and I still believe in you. It sends you into your day feeling like you have your own back.
Number one, work ethic. I'll outwork anybody. I know that the secret to success is not getting it right. It's actually getting after it until you get it done. And so work ethic. Anything is possible if you are willing to give up your timeline and you're willing to put your head down and put the work in. The second thing is I know that failure and screw ups are a massive part of paving the road to success. Like, you know, I'm not a lucky person that can just study stuff and implement it and then it all works out. I have this deeply personal process that everybody shares, by the way, of studying everybody who does it really well and then implementing their best practices and then tweaking it so that it feels right. And so failures, screw ups, detours, all of it is part of the road to success. The third thing is, and, you know, I write about actually all of this stuff in the High Five Habit. There is this mindset trick that I created that is an entire chapter in the High Five Habit that I created when I was launching the 5-Second Rule book, which the hardcover book was a huge failure, believe it or not. And when we launched the hardcover, it originally, we had, the bottom line is that when I launched the hardcover, Evan, the hardcover was not available for sale when my marketing kicked off. Like there was a screw up with Amazon. I started marketing. I told everybody to go buy it and it read as out of stock. Couldn't even pre-order it. It was like out of stock. Huge mix up on my part. I was a self-published author. And as my attitude was going down the drain, I literally started saying this thing to myself on repeat. And everybody, you should just steal this. It's like chapter 13 in the book. This moment is preparing me. This moment is preparing me. This moment is preparing me for something amazing that hasn't happened yet. And every single thing in my life that has been a struggle or a hardship or a heartbreak or anything, even losing people I love to the disease of hopelessness and addiction, those moments of going through tremendous grief and heartache prepared me to help other people to do it. And so when you can start to ground yourself in this idea that I never really liked, by the way, Evan, that whole phrase, life is happening for me, because there's a lot of that I don't want it. I don't believe it's for me. But there's something about tweaking it like this is preparing me. It allows me to take control of a situation I don't like, I didn't want, I didn't plan for, it's not what I deserve. But if it's preparing me for something, it flips my mindset into this attitude that allows me to endure it and allows me to have perspective that someday I will look back on it and understand the wisdom that I gained from it. And so, the failure of the hardcover with the 5-second rule prepared me for something all right. It introduced me to my business model that has a huge partnership with Audible. Like the 5-second rule, because of the failure of the hardcover, became the most sold and listened to audiobook of the year of all of 2017 and opened up a whole new business model. And, which, by the way, is still bearing out, everybody, because as the book sells out around the world, it's the audiobook. Like we were the #1 selling audiobook in the world last week, #2 selling title on Amazon because of the audiobook. And so there's a whole new business model I learned. And so you need to understand that every failure that you have, everybody, it is actually preparing you for something else. That's number 3, that sort of attitude. The other thing, honestly, is I've been successful in spite of myself, Evan, because it's only since learning the high 5 habit that I have been able to truly reset my default thinking and become a person whose default is to cheer for herself. Do I have insecurities? Yes. Do I have self-doubts? Yes. But the one thing I don't do anymore is I do not beat the hell out of myself anymore. You see, even all those years, everybody, when my speaking career was taking off, I was literally my biggest critic. It was never enough. It was, well, I kind of, even though the audience is giving me a standing ovation and the clients just hired me to do 7 more events, Evan, I'm like, well, God, I really screwed up minute 43. I really blew it that time. Like I was relentless with myself. And there's a difference, everybody, between having a level of excellence in what you do and high standards, which I know Evan has a level of excellence in what he does. And he also marries his process with excellence. But that's very different than relentless self-criticism. You know what I mean? And what happens with relentless self-criticism, self-hatred, self-doubt, all of that beatdown is that, #1, you slow down your progress. #2, you miss opportunities. #3, you lose inspiration and motivation because everything is a grind. #4, you have no joy in what you're doing because you are singularly focused on finding stuff that's not going right. And #5, you literally will never be happy and content because you're not allowing yourself to celebrate and empower yourself for all the things you're doing right, which only creates more positive momentum. And it was the high 5 habit, something I created by mistake in April of 2020, that completely changed my habits, my attitude. The reason why this is the most successful thing I've ever done is because I'm different. Using the high 5 habit, I've asked for help. I've gotten out of the insecurity of needing to do it all myself. I'm enjoying the process of it, even though it's kind of a show behind the scenes. Like this is just the greatest gift in the world because it changes how I experience my life. And that's the biggest thing, everybody. That's the final takeaway in terms of success and why most of you don't have the success you deserve because you're too hard on yourself. You are focused on what's not working instead of celebrating what is. You're beating the hell out of yourself every day, which is demotivating. If you want to be more successful than you could ever imagine, you must read The High Five Habit. You must start to put these practices in place. You must start to see the good. You must start to flip your attitude when it's going down. And you must be able to use the tools in here to become somebody that is supportive, encouraging of yourself.
I love it. And just to speak to your willingness to ask for help, as well as just the work ethic, back in Napa, one of our field trips was to go hot air ballooning. And you and I are both afraid of heights. It's like, okay, we're in the same balloon together. And it was like a half hour, 45-minute ride to get there. And Mel's sitting next to me, and we're in this little van, and she pulls out her notebook. She's like, okay, Evan, tell me everything that's wrong with my YouTube channel. I don't have the answers, but I'm going to take notes. I'm going to make sure that this happens. So be honest and tell me, like, rip it apart. It's like, okay. And we did a jam session all the way up. And so I love how you are constantly trying to learn and maximize the time. And even if it's something that is, you're not going to be the one updating thumbnails and tweaking titles. And even though you don't fully understand it.
We were today.
There we go. I love it.
Yep.
But
no, I think that's it too, Evan. And you're like this. Thank you for the compliment. You're the exact same. That's why you see it in me. We are both learners. Like, I think this is the greatest thing in the world, everybody. To, like, of course I want to update thumbnails and obsess over titles, because that's the art of this. And unless you're willing to be a student of what you're doing, you'll never be able to teach the things that you've learned. And so, I think that, Evan is such a student of his craft. It's why he has so much success, and he's having a lot of fun because he brings a student mindset to what he's doing.
I think about your brain as being in two modes to your brain that you need to know about. There's autopilot. We've all experienced that. You drive to work and get there and you're like, oh, who drove the car? Oh my God. Like, I don't even remember driving the car here. Yeah. Well, you did, Lewis. You drove the car. But the thing is that you were in the mode of your brain that's called autopilot. Well, what is autopilot? Autopilot is the interior part of your brain. You'll hear neuroscientists and psychologists talk about the basal ganglia. Very important thing to understand is that there's a part of your brain that its entire job is basically to execute your habits. Habits, big fancy word, means something very simple. Behaviors that you repeat without even thinking about it. When you pull your pants on in the morning, I guarantee you either put your left or your right leg in first. And you have to stop and think about which one it is, don't you? But not when you're putting your pants on.
Right, exactly.
Because that behavior is what researchers call a habit loop. Mm-hmm. It gets encoded as a closed loop system right here. Now, the problem for most of us is that half of the day we're on autopilot. And that's not me making a guess. That's what researchers that study habits and study psychology say. That half of your day, you're basically kind of checked out and you're on autopilot. And when you're checked out and you're on autopilot, any behavior pattern that you repeat can take over. And guess what are behavior patterns that we repeat? Thinking patterns. So self-doubt, worry, procrastination, overthinking, analysis paralysis, fear. Those are all thinking patterns that are habits. One of the most important things that I want people to understand is that you're actually not a worrier. You have a habit of worrying. Big difference. Mm-hmm. You're not a procrastinator. You have a habit of procrastinating. Big difference. And when you understand that any behavior pattern, whether it is a thinking pattern like you doubt yourself all the time, or you get trapped upstairs noodling everything and you can never get started, or whether it's a behavior pattern like you drink too much, or you snap at your kids, or you micromanage your team. Every one of those behavior patterns and thinking patterns can actually be interrupted and replaced using science. Now, let's talk about the second part of the brain. Drive. That's this puppy right here. This is what you want. This is your prefrontal cortex. Drive is the mode where you're in charge of your thoughts, okay? It's where you are fully awake, you are present, and you are driving your thoughts and actions. When you're doing that, your prefrontal cortex is active. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that you need in order to learn new behavior, in order to do something difficult, in order to do something uncertain, in order to do strategic thinking. So I'm going to give you an example. So I'm a righty. If I were to try to write with my left hand, Lewis is going to torture me and tie my hand behind my back and make me do this, I could do it. It would look like I was writing with my foot. And if Lewis came up to me and said, "Hey, Mel, you want some bulletproof coffee?" I'd be like, "Lewis, I'm trying to concentrate. I can't do this." My prefrontal cortex would be el fuego because it is firing on all cylinders to communicate to my hand new behavior. So the thing that's cool about that is that you can use a simple trick. The moment you feel yourself hesitate, the moment you've got one of those moments where you know that you need to, this is that moment that Lewis talks to you about where you got to step outside of your comfort zone and you've got to lean into your passion and you've got to really take some risks and you got to feel the fear and you got to do it anyway. That's the moment where you just woke up and now you got a decision to make. Are you going to drift back into the habits or are you going to awaken your prefrontal cortex and drive forward and focus and do something new? And so the work that I've been doing and speaking about is all about the 5-second rule, which is a trick that I invented by mistake that helps you manually switch, no joke, your brain. It turns off and interrupts the part of the brain that is where all your habits and your behavior patterns are encoded, and it awakens your prefrontal cortex, which in 5 seconds flat allows your brain to help you change. And so anyway,
I love it.
I was rambling on and on because you went on this thing about how your patterns can be destructive and nobody teaches us. And that's absolutely right. And what I want everybody to get out of this conversation between us is that you cannot control how you feel. You cannot control what triggers you. And the fact that you may rise up with anger, you may rise up with self-doubt, you may have anxiety, fill your body, but you can always control what you think and how you behave. And we spend way too much time trying to focus on manipulating how we feel about things and not enough time practicing the skills of controlling your behavior and your thoughts.
Because if you can control your behavior and your thoughts, then the way you feel will be different.
100%. And a lot of us are sitting around waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel courageous, waiting to feel confident, waiting for the right time. And that's not ever coming, ever. Ever. You're not going to change your life up here. You only change it through action. And so to me, I did this interview with your friend Tom, and we talked about how motivation is garbage, and somebody memed it and went crazy. And so the point that I was trying to make is that motivation is great if you feel motivated, but it's garbage, and it's a losing bet to wait to feel ready. Because your body's not designed that way, and neither is your brain. And so I want everybody to understand that, first of all, you can't control the things that trigger you and the fact that you're going to feel afraid and you're going to feel doubt and you're going to feel uncertain. But you can always interrupt that feeling and take control in the moment and actually shift what you're thinking and shift how you behave.
Yeah. And, the bigger the dream, the more fear you're going to have. Even if you feel like you've conquered the fear of something, in order to grow, you've got to take on some new challenge. And there's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be some stress, or there's going to be some worry, or there's going to be some ego checking, and there's going to be some identity crisis.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be this fear that could arise.
Always.
Always. I mean, do you feel like once you'd mastered this that you have no more fear?
Me?
Yeah.
No, the fear still comes, but I have 100% control of what I think and do. Right. So one of the things that is important for me to put on the table is that a lot of times, people look at where you are now. And so they'll see me on television, or they'll see that TED Talk, or maybe you'll be in an audience of 20,000 people in the American Airlines Center, and I'm on stage, and you're like, wow, that chick must have just been more than confident. Like, I hate her. The fact is, that's not at all how I was. When I was 19, I started having crazy panic attacks. And they got so bad that I took medication, and medication was a godsend for me. I took Zoloft for 2 decades. When I had our first daughter, who is now 17 years old, the postpartum depression was so bad that they put me on Ativan, which turns you into a zombie, and I could not be left alone with her. So when it comes to self-doubt and to how we can torture ourselves with our thoughts, boy, have I lived that nightmare. And as I started to use the 5-second rule, which we're going to get into, and everything about my life changed, because when people first learn the rule, what you're going to start doing is you're going to start using the rule to push yourself to do things that are annoying. You're going to push yourself to get up on time. You're going to push yourself to work on your business plan. You're going to push yourself to make calls that are scary. You're going to push yourself to get to the gym. You're going to push yourself to speak up more at work. You're going to push yourself to put the booze down. Behavioral. And then you're going to start to actually use it to change the thinking patterns that are self-sabotaging. So I, 4 years ago, wondered, as I started to see myself go from facing bankruptcy to building a figure business. What happened for me is I started to say, okay, this is a really cool little trick to bring out the most powerful side of you, but can I use this to actually cure myself of anxiety? And the answer is yes, you can. And 4 years ago, I went off Zoloft and I started using the 5-second rule, which I'm going to explain in 1 second, to interrupt the patterns of worry and self-doubt, which, by the way, anxiety is nothing more than the habit of worrying, spiraling out of control. And body feelings triggering now the habit of obsessive worrying that turns into anxiety and then kind of escalates to panic. I started using the 5-second rule to interrupt my thoughts every time I would feel that kind of worry kick in. And because the prefrontal cortex is awakened when you use it, your mind is now ready to take on a totally different thought. It's a very different strategy than just trying to switch the channel on what you're thinking, because you're actually inserting the step that nobody talks about, which is switching the gears in your mind so that your mind can actually take and believe the thinking.
Mel, what does success look like for you?
Oh, what does success look like for me? Success is standing in front of a mirror in my bathroom and seeing a person reflected back that I love and that I am proud to spend my life with.
When was the moment that you realized that was success for you? Has it been this gradual thing over time that you've looked at yourself in the mirror and said, I love myself for who I am, or was there more of a catalyst for you?
Well, I think for the first 52 years of my life, I did the opposite. I, as an adult, really was relentless in my self-criticism, my judgment. My role in my life was chief criticizer. And I did not have this realization about the profound power of, first of all, sort of self-acceptance, because you can't actually get to the profound power of self-love until you walk through the gates of self-acceptance. And for most people, they don't even get there because the habits of self-rejection and self-criticism and self-hatred are so entrenched, and it's actually become so casual and so subconscious that you don't realize just how relentless the beatdown is in your mind. And that was me. And I remember the distinct moment that I had the breakthrough, and it was in April of 2020. And we were full on, the whole world in quarantine at this point, and my business was upside down and life was very overwhelming. And this is the day after I had first high-fived myself in the mirror. And what's interesting is that first morning in April of 2020 that I very first did the high five, a very pathetic moment in my life, one that's very relatable, standing in my bathroom, feeling beaten down and overwhelmed by the demands of life and work, and just feeling like it was all just too much and just completely defeated before I had even started the day. I caught my reflection, and I first thought when I looked at myself in the mirror, my God, you look like hell. And then, of course, the beatdown starts. Your dark circles, one boob's lower than the other. Your neck is so saggy. And then, of course, once one thought goes negative, it's like, you're just going to circle the drain. And so next thing you know, it's why'd you get up so late? You got a Zoom call in 8 minutes. You didn't text Jay back. You haven't walked the dog. Pound down, pound down, pound down. And I don't know what came over me, because you can probably tell that I'm not that cheesy of a person. I pretty direct, tell it like it is.
But
for whatever reason, standing there that morning, feeling overwhelmed by life in my underwear, I just instinctually raised my hand and gave the woman in the mirror a high five because she looked like she needed it. And that very first morning, my reaction to just instinctually high-fiving myself was to laugh at myself because it was so cheesy. But I'll tell you something, like there was like a little switch that flipped. It's not like I was like, oh, my life has changed. I need to write a book. Here we go. Okay. Oh my God, finally I have a book title. No, that's not what happened. I just felt this energy shift where I didn't even think anything, Jay. I just felt this energy muster up that was a little bit like a teammate who, when you screw up a play and they high five you to say, shake it off, get your ass back in there. Come on now. Like it was a little bit like that. But it was the second morning that everything broke open. And so you asked a question about when was it that I learned how to see a person in the mirror that I loved. And it has not been a moment, it's been a process, but it began in a moment. That second morning, I woke up, same problems, same issues, feeling totally overwhelmed by life. And I start walking to the bathroom. And before I even get into the bathroom, I realize I'm feeling something I've never felt before in my adult life. And it was this. You know how when you are going to go meet a friend at a cafe and you really like this person and you're about to walk in the door and see somebody you like, what do you feel, Jay?
Oh, sheer excitement. Yeah, nerves and sheer excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt that way about seeing myself.
Wow.
Now, I felt excitement about seeing an outfit or seeing a haircut, but I don't ever recall in my entire adult life the feeling of being excited to see the human being Mel Robbins. And I think that moment right there was the beginning of realizing what self-love is. And so I rounded the corner to the bathroom, and the profound nature of this is starting to unfold. And as I walk in there and I step in front of my sink and I see myself in the mirror, I have this second realization. And the second realization is there's always two people in the bathroom with you every morning. There's you and there's a human being in the mirror. And that human being is trying, and that human being needs you. And they are tired of your negativity, and they are tired of you criticizing everything that they're doing. And they are tired of the beatdown. And they need you to be more encouraging. They need you to be more compassionate. They need you to be more optimistic. They need you to have more fun. They need you to wake up and see them. And when I realized that I wasn't staring at a reflection, I was staring at my humanity. I was staring at me, this human being. Like, it shifted everything. I had this realization that, when I see one of our three kids, they're 23, 21, and 16. And yeah, there are times on a daily basis that they irritate the hell out of me. But I never, ever cast a gaze on them without just feeling this acceptance and this love for their existence. Even if they're annoying me, I still have this baseline that is grounded in acceptance. It's grounded in compassion. It's grounded in gratitude that they're in my life. It's grounded in seeing them and loving them for who they are, not trying to change, like just this pure thing. And I realized in that moment that I was experiencing that with myself. And so the high five in the mirror has become this way to demonstrate partnership with self, acceptance of self, forgiveness of self. And, I'll tell you, I started adding it into my morning routine. And the way that I did it was, when I'm done brushing my teeth, I get the gunk out of my mouth so I don't have bad breath all day. Then I stand with myself for a second. I look at myself in the eyes, and then I raise my hand. I don't even say a word, because the high five does all the work for you. I mean, the science behind this thing's bananas. That's a whole nother story we can talk about. But, I did this every day for a month. And then I ended up putting a photo up, as you read about in chapter 2. I didn't put any instructions on the photo. It's just me with my retainer in and a high five in the mirror. And within an hour, more than 100 people around the world had high fived themselves in the mirror and posted it online. And that's what made me go, oh my God, maybe I'm not the only one who feels defeated. Maybe I'm not the only one who needs a little encouragement. Maybe I'm not the only one who feels alone. Maybe I'm not the only one who feels like some days I just can't deal with the demands of my life. Maybe I'm not the only one who needs to learn how to support themselves a little bit better, be a little kinder, a little bit more encouraging. Maybe, just maybe, there's something here. Yeah. And so I took on a year-long research project, and the results of it are absolutely freaking extraordinary. This is the most powerful thing I have ever discovered in my entire life. The leading neuroscientists, people that have discovered neuroplasticity in the 80s, have now completely verified everything we're talking about and added in 10 times more research about why this is so groundbreaking.
And you also mentioned, I've heard you talk about Dr. Daniel Amen too, and how he's excited about this habit. And the moment I heard about this habit, I was excited too, because it's so simple. And I've often tried my best to understand this, and hopefully you can help me understand this. Why is it that people often resist something that is so simple? Is it because they feel like, because it's so simple, it's too good to be true?
I think that's the right answer. I also think that there's, the complexity bias. Yeah. So your brain has a complexity bias whereby if your dreams are big or your problems feel big, you naturally think the solution to either solving it or achieving the big dream must also be big and complex. Yeah. And what I've found in life is that, ironically, it's the opposite. The bigger the problem, the smaller the solution that makes a difference. The bigger the dream, the smaller the action that starts you going there. And so I do think that there is a immediate reaction that is that, well, this is so simple. I think there's also this sort of resignation that we all have that's cheesy. I'm not doing that shit. Like, come on, please. And then the bigger reason why, though, that people resist it is really sad. Yeah. And the real reason why people resist this is because your habit of self-rejection is so profound and strong and relentless and habitual that high-fiving yourself is literally, it'd be like me saying, oh no, you got to eat with your feet tonight.
Yeah.
It makes no sense because, we all know, Jay, that you need to be kind to yourself. We all know that you need to treat yourself better. We've all heard a bazillion times us say, if I talk to my friends the way that, I talk to myself, or if my friends talk to me the way that I talk to them, I wouldn't be friends with them. Yeah. And you still talk to yourself that way. And the reason why so many of us are so stuck is we don't know how to be kinder to ourselves because nobody's ever taught you how.
Yeah.
We don't know how to stop the relentless criticism because nobody's ever taught us how. And it is such a strong habit that it is akin to your dominant hand. Like I could write with my left hand, but it would be such a pain because it's the opposite of what I've done my entire lifetime. And for most people, based on our research, they have spent an entire lifetime criticizing themselves.
Yeah.
It's literally, you and I speak English. It's the language that we speak. Criticism, judgment, the beatdown is the language that most people speak in their minds.
Yeah.
And so that's the other reason why most people's reaction to this is, well, that's dumb. That's not going to work. And besides, it's stupid. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time, I was one of those people that beat myself up. I thought that I didn't have worth, didn't have purpose, I didn't know that my story actually mattered. So I just would allow all the negative emotions and feelings, you name it, to just flood in my life. And that would often inform how I acted with my friends, with my family, with my work colleagues, you name it. It wasn't a good scenario. I was very angry, very upset because I felt like I wasn't going anywhere until that one day, it's a long story, Mel, but to cut it short, until everything just came crashing down. And I started to ask myself those difficult questions that many people often avoid, and really started to dig deep into, who is Jay? Who am I really? Like, what is my purpose? And then it's like, well, you were talking about how you had that moment of realization. I call it like the old light bulb burst and the new one was quickly put in its place. And it was like shining brightly, and it finally all made sense. It's like, my story has value. I was born with a purpose. I don't have to go and continue to chase this thing. I am enough right now. And I love your message, especially because it speaks to this very thing of, you do have value. You are enough, and you should love yourself every single day, no matter what.
Yeah. And, I knew all that, and yet I had no idea how to do it, Jay.
Yeah.
I was on the outside. You would look at me and say, wow, that Mel Robbins is such a positive, loving person. I was to everybody else. Oh, wow, that Mel Robbins, she is wildly successful. Yeah, because I was relentlessly trying to prove to myself that I had value. I had married worth with achievement, like so many of us do. Yeah. And we do it because when we were little, you got positive attention and praise when you did well in school, when you made the sports team. It got conditioned into you to believe that you are only worthy when you are doing something that makes you feel worthy. Yeah. And so we get all these mixed messages. And so I didn't know how to do those things, Jay. I would stand in the mirror, having self-published a book, selling 2 million copies, and be like, it's not enough. What's next? Oh, the Audible thing's number one, not enough. And the reason why is I had not fixed the core problem that every human being struggles with, and it is self-rejection. Yeah. That is everybody's core problem. And I didn't even know how deeply of a problem it was until I discovered the high five habit and started to practice treating myself differently. Because here's the thing that is so interesting based on the research. You cannot change a habit of self-rejection and a habit of self-hatred by telling yourself you're worthy. Mm. You cannot do it by telling yourself you love yourself. And the reason why is your actions for your entire life have demonstrated the opposite. Yeah. And so your brain goes, no, you don't. Mm-hmm. You don't think you're worthy. Stop saying that crap. You don't believe that. And so your brain rejects it because it's been programmed based on your own behavior. Yeah. To believe that you don't think anything you do is good enough. You don't think you're ever good looking enough. You don't think it's ever enough money. That is what you've trained your brain to believe. And so the only thing that has ever worked for me is the high five habit. And I'll tell you why, because it's a physical action. You shouldn't say a thing when you do it because the programming is too powerful against you and your mind. And I want you, when you practice this, to leverage programming and neural associations that are already in your brain associated with cheering for everybody else. We're just going to aim it right back at you. And so the huge transformational power of this is that because most of us have either watched other people high five one another in sports or in road races, or we've watched videos of teachers high-fiving kids as they enter the classroom, or we have experienced high-fiving people that we love or high-fiving teammates, or we have experienced somebody else high-fiving us. That behavior and the positive association and the neural programming and the wiring in your nervous system is already in your body, mind, and spirit. Mm. We are just going to aim all that stuff back at your own reflection. And so what we're doing with the physical action of high-fiving the mirror is you are every single morning shutting down the critic.
You are demonstrating that you see yourself and you care about yourself. And over a short period of time, based on the chemical releases in your brain, based on the nervous system wiring that gives you a celebratory jolt, and based on all the positive programming that you have in your mind already affiliated with a high five, you literally reset your default programming back to the way that you were born. Because the bottom line is, none of us came out of the womb beating the heck out of ourselves. None of us as toddlers stood in front of the mirror and were like, gosh, my thighs are fat. I better not go to kindergarten today. We were wired for love.
Yeah. Mm.
We were wired for self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Life taught you to hate yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, through the habits in this book, and by adding a high five to your morning routine, you will tap back into something that is core to who you are, which is self-love and self-acceptance.
Yeah. How does the high five habit help people that are dealing with trauma?
It's a great question. So, number one, let's talk about what happens when you do it. So, how it helps with trauma is that we're going to unpack trauma at several layers.
Yeah.
Because trauma is obviously a stored experience in your mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And what happens for a lot of people with trauma is that when you stand before yourself in the bathroom and you look in the mirror, a lot of people with trauma that is not been healed or is not being healed, is you see the trauma as evidence that you're damaged, that you're unlovable, that you're a bad person, that nothing's going to work out for you, that you're not good enough. And so you thereby see a person that isn't worthy of the love that you desire. It's why you're seeking it in relationships and you're seeking it outside of yourself, because internally you see the trauma not as evidence that you've survived something, which means you deserve a high five, but evidence that you're damaged so you don't. And so the high five in the mirror becomes an act of healing.
Yeah.
It becomes an act of defiance that brings your power back inside you. It becomes an act of empowerment, acknowledging how far you've come and all that you've survived, and the fact that you still love you and you still are going to have you. There was a woman that wrote to us that was in a domestic violence shelter when she saw a video that I did about the high five habit. And she said that, I've had childhood trauma, very severe, from the age of 4 till about 15. Then I left the family abusive home. I'm now in my late 20s. I've been in a wildly violent relationship. I've just escaped that. I have nothing. I know I have a lifetime of healing, but in 5 days, waking up in a domestic violence shelter, in the most traumatic experience of my life, what the high five habit is showing me is that at least I still have myself.
Yeah.
That if I could learn how to have my own back, if I can forgive myself for the mistakes I've made, if I could forgive myself for not listening to my intuition, if I could see myself, then I can heal myself. That's what it can do for trauma. The other thing that I write about in this book is, because the high five in the mirror is just the beginning, is you can practice something called high-fiving your heart. This is in chapter 13. This is how you can use a high five. You put it in the center of your chest. And I want you to put it right here, because you're going to now use something that's a treasure in your body called the vagus nerve. And, as you know the vagus nerve, it's an on-off switch. It switches off your fight or flight, dysregulated, traumatized nervous system. And it flips on your resting, cool, grounded nervous system. So on those mornings where you wake up and you're spiraling, or those mornings, and mornings for a lot of people because cortisol levels are high, or it's evening and darkness triggers you. When you feel yourself get triggered, put your hands on your chest. This is called high-fiving your heart. Take a deep breath. And then just repeat these words. I'm okay.
I'm okay.
I'm safe.
I'm safe.
I'm loved.
I'm loved.
And repeat them over and over and over until you feel yourself come back into your body. And what you're going to feel as you repeat those words and you press right here in the center of your chest, activating the vagus nerve, is you're going to feel your dysregulated, triggered nervous system flip off. And you're going to feel yourself come back into your grounded body. And you're going to feel yourself take control of your body response, whether you're in a grocery store, or you're at a stoplight, or you're standing in your kitchen, or you're waking up. And in that moment, if you can hear yourself saying or thinking, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved, it's true. In that moment, you are. And even if it only gives you a few seconds, it allows you to realize that within you, you have the ability to take control of how you're feeling in any moment.
I think it's another powerful tool that we can all use, because I myself have experienced quite a bit of trauma. So I'm a morning person, get up at 4 a.m. in the morning. People say that I'm crazy, but I do it for a specific reason. And I have a philosophy in my life that if I can beat the sun, which is constant every single day, then no matter what comes my way during the day, I can beat that too. And it's setting myself up for some positive habits like exercise, like prayer and meditation, the high five habit now as well that I do. All these things, they're all in my repertoire, my toolkit for success in combating any of those horrible things that do come my way, stressful times, you name it.
What have you either learned about yourself or experienced by adding a high five in the mirror to your morning routine?
I think it's what I've noticed more recently actually is it makes me smile, number one. Number two, it makes me, like when I do those words and at the end when I get to you are loved, it actually makes me feel like, hang on a minute, I am loved. It puts me in that, once again, reminding state that I am loved. And it helps me whenever I'm going through like a difficult, stressful moment of the day to just stop and reflect and say, Jay, you high-fived yourself in the morning. It's going to be okay. This is nothing. So that's what it's helped me do. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you loved the study in the book in chapter 2 about NBA teams, and most people love this study. But basically, you know, if you think about it, the reason why you smile, by the way, is because anytime somebody high fives you, your brain gives you a drip of dopamine, and your brain does not know the difference between you high fiving yourself in the mirror and you high fiving me. And so, you know, when I say the programming, you're smiling and everybody feels a lightened mood, even on the worst mornings, because your brain is giving you dopamine. The second reason why you feel more assured is because your body instinctually is wired for gestures of celebration. And so, like when you cross a finish line, what do?
High five.
Arms immediately go up, right?
Yeah.
Arms up. When you wave, arms up. When your favorite team scores, arms up. When your favorite band comes on the stage, arms up. When you surprise somebody, arms up. And so the arms up is a celebratory gesture. And so the reason why you leave the bathroom feeling a little more empowered is your nervous system just gave you some of that associative programming that gave you a jolt of vitality. Now, when we take this into the research lane, researchers looked at the NBA basketball teams here in the United States, and they were curious, researchers at Berkeley University, what is it that are the habits of the teams that have the best, winningest records? And they discovered that there are habits present in the preseason that are present for all teams that are winning. And they're not present for the teams that have terrible records. And the habits were this. The teams that have the best records at the end of the season also have the most number of fist bumps, pats on the back, and high fives during the preseason. And the reason why this habit of encouraging gestures correlates to a winning record is because these aren't just gestures, they're demonstrations of trust and partnership.
Yeah.
The teams that do the worst have the least number of these. No fist bumps, no pats on the back. Everybody's in it for themselves. And you can see it because they make selfish moves, selfish plays. The team's not wired together. And I'm here to tell you that the reason why you feel that sort of carry through in your day is because the high five is creating partnership with yourself and trust within yourself. And it gets sealed in your mind. You're not we've had more than 130,000 people go through a 5-day high five challenge in a matter of 26 days from 91 countries. And so many people report that throughout their day, they also can reflect back to the high five in the morning. Again, because the neural association with a high five is so pounded into everybody's brain, regardless of where you grew up, regardless of the culture that you grew up in, you have witnessed these things happening in culture. And so it's just programming that we're activating to help you. And here's what I've noticed. This is the biggest thing, everybody. And it's this. I mentioned the fact that, I was such an achiever because I thought that that's what made me worthy of love. And so many of you will stand in front of the mirror and you'll feel resistant to doing this because you'll say, but I didn't go to the gym today. But I didn't get up at 4:00. I hit the snooze button. Should I still high five myself? And the answer is yes, especially on those days, because the high five isn't something you earn. It's something you deserve and need simply for breathing. If you can stand there and be here another day and you're still pushing forward and you're still trying and you're not getting it right, you're still trying. You not only deserve a high five just for your existence, you need one. It is the most empowering force on the planet to feel seen, to feel encouraged. And I want people to understand that when you start to practice this and demonstrate it to yourself, it not only changes how you see yourself and how you feel about yourself, it changes how you operate out there. If I like myself, it doesn't matter if you like me or not, Jay. It might sting a little bit because I want you to like me, but it won't change the fact that I still like myself. If I am really treating myself with respect, I won't allow somebody else to treat me with disrespect.
Yeah.
Because I demonstrate every morning that I respect myself, and that becomes the new baseline. We let so much crap slide with other people because we don't even treat ourselves with acceptance and respect. That's why we're looking for it outside of ourselves. And, one more thing that I'll say is after more than a year of doing this, I don't even need to high five myself. I still do it, but I don't need to. And I'll tell you why. It wouldn't even occur to me at this point to criticize myself. Because I don't see a body. I don't see a face. I see a human being who's trying. It is reset my brain in the most beautiful and profound way. Now, do I still get pissed off when I'm number 2 on the New York Times? Of course. But that's not pissed off at myself. And the recovery from that is almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
Because I have a new resting default that's optimistic, that's encouraging, that's compassionate. The resilience factor is through the roof. It's really unbelievable. And so for those of you that are high achievers, it has not changed how competitive I am. It has not changed the game that I am playing. It has made me better at it. Because when you're constantly focused on what's going wrong, you're going to hate what you're doing. You're going to feel beaten down. When you can celebrate all the little wins around you and get pissed off for 2 seconds about number 2 and then move on, you have more joy, more contentment. You play a bigger game. You feel more motivated. You make a bigger impact. We have it reverse. You think that you got to have all the money in the world and then you're going to be happy and satisfied with yourself. Not true. Treat yourself with respect and encouragement now, and you will feel empowered to go do all the things that create all the wealth that you need and all the impact you want. it's a moment that I think everybody can relate to. I mean, what was going on in my life is my dream job, which was to be a daytime talk show host, ended.
Which you were great at.
Thank you. The show failed. I mean, let's be honest. It got canceled. I got fired from my dream job. That's what happened. I could make some lovely story up, but that's if I'd been amazing, we'd be in season 2. And so I find myself fired from my dream job. I then abruptly get a book contract canceled, not because the publisher is a jerk, but because I have crazy dyslexia and ADHD. It is next to impossible for me to take what's in my noggin and get it on a piece of paper. And I was a year late in delivering a manuscript.
You really?
So I then get a contract canceled and I have to return money I've already spent. And then the pandemic is just in full swing, and speech after speech after speech after speech starts canceling. Right. We get 3 kids coming home, 2 from college, 1 from middle school. We all know what it was like to be with our kids in the early days. They were like caged animals going through grief and fear and anger and aiming it right at us, the parents. Yep. And I found myself one morning standing in my bathroom in my underwear.
Okay.
I was brushing my teeth. I hadn't even had a cup of coffee yet. I hadn't put on a bra. I mean, I'm just standing there.
Giving me the visual. Appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, please like brush it up somehow, okay? Because you trust me, you know, if you want to look at this, there's something wrong with you. So I am standing there, and of course, I look at the mirror, and I immediately think, ugh, I have jowls that look like saddlebags on a pack mule going into the Grand Canyon. I've got stripes on my neck. One tit is hanging lower than the other. I got gray hair coming in. I look down, the dog still has to be walked. I haven't responded to Ed's text. I've got a Zoom meeting in 9 minutes. I literally, my mind is taking me down the drain. I feel the mood drop. Look, like you, I am one of the most successful motivational speakers in the world.
It's so awesome.
I didn't have a fucking thing to say to myself.
Right, I've been there, yeah.
Like, all I wanted to do is crawl on the couch with the dog and have a cup of coffee. I wanted to not have to deal with anything or deal with anybody or face the problems that I felt. I wanted the stress to disappear. And I didn't know what to say. Here's the pathetic part.
Okay.
As if this isn't lame enough.
Right.
I literally, without thinking, raised my hand.
I love this.
And gave myself a high five in the mirror.
I love this.
And I could cry. Like, I just, my shoulders dropped. I kind of felt this like, okay.
Yeah.
Pick your head up.
Yeah.
It's okay, you got this. Wow. And I went on with my day.
Wow.
That was it.
In that moment, do you go, this is something?
No. God, no.
Not at all.
I'm like, don't tell anybody what just happened. Like, that is lame. Oh, my God. Yeah, like, normally what I would do is on a stressful day, it's like, fuck it, cancel the Zoom call and make a Bloody Mary. Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know. So
25 billion people are agreeing and connecting with you right now, obviously.
But this is the truth.
Yeah.
Right? This is the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the next morning, this is the weird part. This is when things got weird. I woke up, I always wake up when the alarm rings, and then I make my bed. Largely so I don't crawl back into it, but also so that I have a beautiful place to come back to sleep, so that I practice simple discipline.
Yep.
And as I walked toward the bathroom, something weird happened.
Okay.
I started to anticipate seeing myself. Sort of like, you know, when you pull out of your driveway and you got a neighbor that waves to you?
Yeah.
I felt like I was about to see a friend.
Interesting.
Now, here's the crazy part. I have probably spent the last 40 years either criticizing the person I see in the mirror.
You really?
Or ignoring her. And so I step into the bathroom, right? So I step in and there's your reflection. And I stood there for a minute, and like you, I'm really busy. And my mind is also like wildly active, constantly going. And when I stood there and stared at my reflection, knowing that I was about to high five myself, it was this moment of like intentional, just purposeful presence with myself.
That's beautiful, yeah.
And as I raised my hand and high five myself again, something else weird happened.
Okay.
It's impossible to have a negative thought when you're high-fiving yourself.
I love this.
impossible.
I love this.
You cannot go, you suck.
Yeah.
You're a failure. You've like blown it. You're not going to do well in this meeting. Today's going to be, you can't do it. And I'm going to tell you why. The science on this
is what I love. Yes. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Okay.
So here's what happens. You have a lifetime of giving other people high fives.
Yeah, you got a trigger now or something, don't you?
So what does a high five mean to you?
Good job. Awesome. Let's go, right?
Yes.
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 Yep.
You got a teammate that's going down, you
Yep.
give them a high five to pick them up.
Yep.
You got the biggest player of your life, you give them a high five to
Yep.
send them into the game.
Yep.
You've got a really awesome thing you're celebrating, a high five is
Yes.
what seals it.
Yes.
So you have a lifetime of positive programming.
Very good.
High-fiving other people.
This is awesome.
It is
Yep.
already stored right here in your basal ganglia.
Yeah.
And so when you do the physical motion that is tied to all the positive programming, Ed,
Yeah.
you start to fuse it with your own reflection.
Oh my gosh.
You silence the inner critic. You silence decades of criticism. You shut the shame up. You literally reset the regret that you may feel. Any stress or anxiety that you feel about what's about to happen shuts up. And you cannot have negative thoughts
This is really good.
as your arm moves. Now, there's this whole field of psychology and neuroscience called neurobics. I didn't make the word up, but it's like neuroscience and aerobics.
Okay.
And the research shows that when you take an unexpected physical action, so, you know, we're used to high-fiving everybody else, but we're not used to high-fiving ourselves. So it's unexpected for your brain, so your prefrontal cortex engages. And you have a positive thought with it. You accelerate new neural pathway development. And so you're using the physical action that's unexpected along with a lifetime of positive programming to fundamentally rewire how you think about yourself.
This is good.
It's unbelievable.
This is good.
And so that's just the beginning.
Can I say something about that? I want to just validate a few things. One, I want to tell you that I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that you spent those 4 years either criticizing or being
40.
invisible. 40. Okay, excuse me, 40. That's what I meant to say. 40 years. And I can tell you, because we get this both a lot, we're, you know, obviously people that pour energy in other people. I just want to tell you that that's true for me too, and I want my audience to know that. I do a lot of criticism of myself. I've done it all my life, but I've really moved that more into invisibility. I don't look at myself. I don't think about myself. I do that as well. So just from a male perspective, I don't have the right boob lower than the left and all that other stuff you're going through.
If you lift on one side, you might.
I probably actually, at this point, the way I've been eating, I definitely do. But typically, I would like to think I don't. But I want to say that, I want to second that. And then the other thing is the massive power of what you're describing, because you're engaging both parts of the brain here. You're engaging the frontal cortex of the brain because it's a new move, so your brain can't conserve energy. It's got to actually engage. But you're also engaging all the hardwiring you've had for years and years and years of having this trigger of this high five. This is brilliant at both times. So I don't want to interrupt you on it.
I'm not even done, dude. Like I've only just like scratched the surface on the science.
Okay, so let's
you're gonna freak the fuck out.
Okay.
Talk about max out.
Yeah.
You're going to
freak
max
the
out
freak
on this.
F out. Okay. So keep rolling on it, because you know me, I'm super fascinated by this. So simple move, out of nothing, high five. All of a sudden, you've stumbled into some of the best neuroscience in the world that proves that this is a game changer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now there's even more. So think about a moment when you go to high five somebody and you guys kind of like, you know, like you have a shitty high five, right? Yeah, you miss it. It's like limp.
Yeah.
Ugh, I hate that word.
Me
limp.
too.
Okay.
Do it again. Right.
Yeah. Do it again. Why? Because a high five requires both presence and intention.
Yes, that's true. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And so standing there with yourself, there's new research right out of Harvard that proves that if you take just 1 minute of an intentional reflection about who you're going to be today, it changes your level of productivity. It changes how you show up as a leader. It changes your ability to impact people, and it changes your effectiveness. Simply a single minute of setting an intention about who you're going to be today. And so when you stand in front of that mirror and you don't ignore yourself like Ed and my husband do, or criticize yourself like 91% of women do on default, and you take a moment to intentionally be with yourself, and you think about the day ahead, even if you've got a lot of stressful stuff going on, especially actually if you have a lot of stressful stuff going on, and you then raise your hand and you begin your day with this high five to yourself, you are sealing that intention that you believe in yourself and that you got it.
Very good.
It's incredible. There's also, I was just with Dr. Daniel Amen, who I know you know too, who's one of the world's leading experts on the brain.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the high five habit. And he was saying that the other thing that's happening, and this is why when you first start doing it, it's going to take 2 to 3 days to get through, and we're going to talk about the resistance, and we're going to talk about the fact that it feels weird and why.
Yeah.
Because there's a very deep and very sad reason why it feels weird and why you're going to have resistance to doing this. But by about day 3, what's going to happen is pretty crazy. You're either going to feel a major surge and boost in your mood, or you are going to have a very just kind of unnerving sense of calm. And the reason why is you have a lifetime of your nervous system experiencing joy when you celebrate people. I mean, think about going to, for me, you know, well, you're a Boston guy, the Red Sox. You go to the Fenway Park and they score, you're like, yes!
Naturally.
High-fiving
First
each
move
other.
you make.
Like, yes.
First move.
And so, literally, when you raise your hand like that, and it has been infused with so much celebration, your nervous system and your brain recognizes it, and you get what he calls a positive drip of dopamine, which either calms your brain and the stress, or it amplifies your mood to make you feel excited about what you're about to do.
My gosh.
Isn't this incredible?
It is incredible. Yeah, it is incredible. So are you suggesting, and we're going to go to the resistance in a minute, I'm just thinking through all the applications. The other thing is almost anything good happens in my life, especially anyone that ever played a sport, bam, I am high-fiving anywhere I can get it and spread it. And it is a way of acknowledging yourself, but also acknowledging the other person. It's a massive state change. It's so, I love the fact that I introed you this way, not knowing we were going to talk about this, that you can take incredibly complicated things and distill them down to the most simple action you could take. This is the best example ever of that, because there's all this neuroscience behind all of it. You're like, look in the mirror and high five, right? So
which sounds like, oh, please.
It actually doesn't now, though. Like, we're 10 minutes in here and it's brilliant, right? So it doesn't sound that way to me now. So I want to go back. Physically, you're saying that what you're suggesting we all do, recommending, which I will begin to do immediately, is that upon waking, is there a time that you believe that this is applicable?
It's a good question. I personally think how you set your day up is how it ends up. And all the research also shows that when your mood in your morning impacts productivity all day.
For sure.
So when you do small things to boost your mood, it has a documented impact on your ability to focus, to be productive, to believe in yourself. And so I personally would recommend that you habit stack it, that you pair it with something that you always do in the morning in the bathroom. So whether that's brushing your teeth or whether it's flossing or shaving or whatever you might do, before or after, just before you leave that bathroom, you have to high-five yourself in the mirror. And so the simple rule is don't ever leave a bathroom without high-fiving yourself in the mirror. Send yourself back into the game of life, having your own back.
Okay. Can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
No one else is going to ask you this. I'm just thinking through, because I'm going to do this.
Okay.
Okay, I'm in, 1,000%. Do you think that if you do it too repetitiously that it loses its charge? Or do you believe that if you do it more repetitiously that it actually gains a pattern with you that as a deeper trigger?
Excellent question. I'm realizing that I do the high five right before I leave the bathroom. So it's the last thing I do.
Okay.
It's always after I brush my teeth.
Okay.
But it's the last thing I do before I leave the bathroom. Now I might come back in and put makeup on or do something else, but that first high five in the morning is important.
Okay.
And here to answer your question, in the beginning, it becomes something you do. It becomes a practice that you're adding to your morning routine. Over time, it becomes part of who you are. Because here's the killer thing. Oh my God, I'm not even done explaining all the research. Because we've got to get into motivation. We've got to get into what research says about celebration, empowerment, support. We got to get into what the studies about the NBA teams say about high fives and championship teams. I got so much to unpack here. It's incredible. So Oh God, what was I going to say? I was high-fiving in the...
Well, I want you to stay on one thought you have, because I don't want to move off of it, because we're going to get into the research. I actually want to ask you about the resistance piece of it, because you said that it's powerful and a little bit sad, and that just stuck with me when you said it. Because we can move into the MBA stuff, but beforehand, because one, my question is, don't outthink the room, right? Just take this principle and apply it.
Right.
That's the first thing. Don't overthink it. How do I do it? Where do I put my hand? Just give yourself a high five. You're not thinking about when you're giving another person a high five.
Right.
Open hand, closed hand, just give them a damn high five, right?
Yeah.
So let's not overthink the room. I know that 30% of us are like, exactly which hand, how quickly, how long do I hold it up for? Let's not do that, everybody, right? Let's apply the principle. And the second thing is, though, what is the resistance? Why is there a resistance?
This is so sad.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's two kind of buckets that it falls into.
Okay.
And the one bucket is that you believe you only deserve it if you've achieved something.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything worthy of a high five. I don't get a high five unless I hit the number on the scale, or I have that number in the bank account, or I land the job, or I find the person, or I do the thing. And by withholding celebration, support, empowerment, and encouragement from yourself, you're making it not only harder, I would say next to impossible to make those things that you want a reality.
Very good.
The other reason why people feel a resistance, and this is also incredibly sad, is that your default in your mind is that you are not worthy of it.
Yes. Yeah.
That you have failed, or you're damaged, or you've been abused, or you have so much evidence stacked up about why you do not deserve to be celebrated.
Yeah.
That you actively withhold it from yourself.
Yep. Which is a metaphor for other parts of your life. You actually don't think you're worthy of this joy. I have to say to you, if you're hearing me under my breath during the interview, I'm going, this is very good, this is very good. You guys, they don't normally hear me talk like this, because I'm going to be honest with everybody. When I have someone on the show that's in our space or our world, there's usually, this is very good, or, this is great. But when I'm listening to you right now, there's a part of me that envies you a little bit, because I think this is one of the most brilliant things I've heard since I've ever been involved in personal development or peak performance or life change. And so I'm just going, why didn't I think of this? This is so good, right? I also am like a high five person. I've done it with people think I'm doing my kids all the time. I'm sort of
I love that you said this, dude.
Okay.
You want to know why?
Yeah.
Because we're all good at giving everybody else a high five.
So everybody thinks they're extra good at it, but everybody's actually good at doing it. They just they won't give themselves one because they're not worthy.
Or nobody's ever taught you how.
Yeah.
Like, we all know we're supposed to validate ourselves and love ourselves and accept ourselves. How the do you do it?
Yeah. What are you doing actually to physically do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so the thing is that we're amazing at cheering for our favorite sports teams and downloading albums and planning birthday parties and doing extra work for colleagues who are stressed out and visiting people that are sick. We not only fall short. What I have found now researching this for a year is that most of us do the opposite. We withhold it from ourselves.
Yep. I do.
Yeah, I do too.
I do the two things you said. If I'm in a space by myself, I am typically being somewhat critical of myself, evaluating what I could have done. There's one thing we all do too. I could have done this better. That's actually self-criticism. I used to think, no, I'm growing. I'm evaluating myself. I'm self-aware. Nah, it's usually criticism.
Yeah.
It's usually criticism. And then because I avoid that guy, I do the invisible thing. I've literally gotten ready in front of hundreds of mirrors in my life and really never looked at myself. Really never looked at the man looking back at me. Like, I wonder sometimes, I've looked at myself so little, I don't know if everybody can relate to this. I don't know if I would recognize me in a crowd if I were there. And that's a pretty sad thing to admit as somebody who's, probably impacted a few people in their life positively, right? Like, I pay so little attention to me and give myself so little of just this gift. For me, I'm thinking about this in the morning. For sure, I'm going to do it. I'm also thinking about before I go out and give a talk somewhere, just find myself in a bathroom, just give myself the gift of it. Yeah. This is a gift you can give yourself.
Exactly.
That is so simple. That
do you know why your mind is popping off?
Yeah.
Because you actually understand so much about the brain.
Yeah.
Like I can see like your
I
neurons firing as you're connecting the dots and being like, this actually reshapes your RES.
Correct.
Like this is like something that is a tool.
Yeah.
Like one of the other things that I think that you're going to really, really love about this is that I want to tell you about 2 other studies.
Okay.
Okay. Because your audience, my audience, really into peak performance, into achieving goals, into, and I think when you're somebody that's driven like you and I are, you already said it. We have a negativity bias because we're so driven that we've developed a voice that's really hard on us. We don't see the 100 things that went right today. We see the one frickin' thing that didn't work.
Absolutely.
And then we look at that and we call that, of course, it's one of the reasons why we're successful. But I'm here to tell you, it's also why you're not as joyous as you could be as you're having this success.
Yes.
Because you are focused on the shit that's wrong instead of having micro celebrations and moments of joy and drip dopamine, as Dr. Amen says, throughout the day as you're seeing the things that are going right.
Yep. I think the robbing of that of yourself will eventually cause a frying and burnout. If you continue to take actions and get no dopamine hits for doing any of them, at one point you just reach the conclusion that it's not as worth doing as it used to be.
Yeah.
And this is one way to give yourself that hit. My brain is firing thinking about all the applications of this.
Yeah.
So give me another study. You're going to say another study.
So there's 2 really cool studies that I know you're going to love. Okay. So, and this goes into the power, the motivational power of encouragement, support, and celebration.
Okay.
Because I think the myth of like tough love and being hard on yourself is a motivational force.
I know it is.
Based on the research, it doesn't work. Even if you look at Goggins, what does he do when he is really up against the wall, right? He's got that cookie jar thing.
That's right.
That's a positive memory.
It's a positive memory. That's right. Yep.
So even that is in the form of encouragement.
Yep.
And so here's the study with the NBA teams. They took a look at NBA teams in a couple across various seasons. You can predict who is going to be in the championships based on the teams that have the most number of high fives, fist bumps, and backpats in the preseason.
In the preseason?
Because they build trust and partnership. And you can also predict who's going to rank the worst.
Based on the fewest?
Yes, because those players are selfish and in for themselves. And so there is a partnership and a trust that this builds. And what I'm here to tell you is you do this every morning, you will build partnership and trust with yourself.
I love it.
You are the most important person in your life. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation of every single relationship that you have. You better start fucking paying attention to it and looking yourself in the eyes. And if you continue to do this, you are a man with an enormous heart and soul.
Thank you.
You will, I don't even see myself physically. I'm in touch with the being that's in this like skin sack. Seriously.
Were you prior to this?
I don't think so. I think I was so busy and sort of dysregulated in my nervous system. And, you know, my success was born out of, at least in this chapter of my life, another rock bottom moment where we were on the verge of losing absolutely everything. And I know that you've been there too, facing bankruptcy. I was drinking myself into the ground. Chris and I were fighting like crazy. While I have fixed things on the outside, I never actually knew how to connect with myself on the inside. I absolutely was chasing all those things outside, the likes, the validation, the external achievement stuff, in order to prove that I was worthy of love. The high five habit, and that's just the beginning. I mean, this high five in the mirror is just a Trojan horse. I mean, the whole book is about small habits based in science that teach you how to fulfill your own needs emotionally and how to support, encourage, and empower yourself through the ups and downs in life. How to flip jealousy, for example, into inspiration. How to go from a really low mindset into what I call a high five attitude when you feel insecure or people pleasing. And so the high five in the mirror is the beginning. I'm going to tell you the 5-second rule. And when we're done, remind me to tell you the story about the reticular activity system, the RES in the brain, and my metaphor of doing laundry.
Okay, you are in my go zone for
I
sure.
know you are. You have all people on the planet.
You're in my
You
zone.
are the one that is going to go. Oh, this is so good.
All right, we're going to laundry after this.
So the 5-second rule. So the 5-second rule is desperate. Are you kidding? It is brilliant, but the story is desperate. It's 2008. We're in the middle of the housing crisis. My husband has followed his dream and gone into the restaurant business, opening up a string of little pizza restaurants with his best friend. We were new entrepreneurs, so of course, when location number 1 was great, what do? Complete idiots. We cash out our 401ks, our kids' college savings. We get a home equity line because that's free money. We cash out the credit cards. We ask friends and family to invest. We go all in. And then Chris and his business partner, as is the case in the restaurant business, the second location was a huge dog. Too big, too expensive, wrong location, tons of traffic driving by every day as you're sitting there with an empty restaurant knowing you're These guys are so committed to returning an investment. I have to hand it to Chris and Jonathan. They work day and night to pull this plane crash out of like the factoring and this and like just anything you could possibly do. So we find ourselves in a situation in 2008, 41 years old, and we're $800,000 in debt.
Wow.
Dude, I could not pay for it. There was a moment, the rock bottom moment was this morning where I went, and we live in a nice neighborhood. Friends have invested. We can't let them know this is happening.
Boy.
Kids, 3 of them under the age of 10.
Oh, my gosh. Whoa.
I remember going to the grocery store. And I went to an Ivy League school. I have a law degree. But here I am unemployed. We've lost everybody's money. We're about to lose the house. And I'm doing that. I don't know if you've ever played this sort of like mental bingo game with your check card where you're like, okay, please, dear God, let the electronic system not talk to the bank. Just let it go through.
Absolutely, yes.
Please.
Yes.
So I'm standing there as she's scanning this stuff, knowing that the balance is red. And I'm thinking, please, 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 just let this go through, please. And the woman looks at me and says, oh, this was declined. I was ready with my excuse. I would always cock my head and go, well, that's weird, because it just worked at the gas station, which was a complete lie.
I've done
and
this.
then I'd be like, okay, kids, let's go to the car and get my other card. And we would walk out of there and leave the stuff, and I'd get in the car and drive away.
Oh, my gosh.
And then I, of course, would come home and drink to numb all of the everything. So I was sitting in a chair, and I was doing that thing. I'm sure you have. Have you ever been in such a low moment where you give yourself a pep talk?
Yes.
That is a pathetic moment.
I have been there. Yeah. You're
I
taking
was
me
there.
back to it.
Yeah. That's it, Mel. Tomorrow morning, it's the new you. No more drinking. You gotta be nice to your husband. You gotta look for a job. Girl, you gotta get these kids on the bus on time. And by God, woman, when that alarm rings, you have got to get out of bed. You cannot lay there like a human pot roast marinating in fear. You cannot hit the snooze button 4 times. You have got to get up and get the day started. And then, honest to God, what happened is a rocket ship launched across the television screen. It was probably the 4 Manhattans that gave me this idea.
Say, are we
it's really stupid, And
Such a great storyteller.
That's it. Tomorrow morning, when the alarm rings, you got to launch yourself out of bed. If you move fast enough, Mel, you will beat the anxiety. You won't be in the bed when the anxiety hits. So the next morning, and this is the power of the 5-second rule. Now keep in mind, I didn't know any of this at the time. A lot like the high five habit. It was this super simplistic moment that changed everything. And what changed everything for me was the very next morning. It was a Tuesday in February outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm familiar with that location.
And the alarm rings. And what I'm about to share with you, if you've never heard this, you'll never see life again the same. You never will. Once you see what I'm about to show you, you can't unsee this. There is a 5-second moment of hesitation that defines your entire life. It's the moment of hesitation that is the gap between what psychologists call a bias towards thinking and a bias towards action, right? The moment you have an impulse to move, to say something, to do something, you'll start hesitating as you think about it. If you don't physically move within those 5 seconds, your basal ganglia takes over and you drift into a bias toward thinking. If you can manage what you think and do in that 5-second window, you know the secret to changing any habit, any behavior, any thought pattern. Now, I didn't know that then. All I knew is I had thought of this dumb thing while I was drunk, and now it's February in Massachusetts, and it's dark and it's freezing. The alarm goes off. I start thinking, I'm not going to fucking launch myself out of it. This is the dumbest. How is this going to help? I don't want to get out of it. It's cold. It's dark. It's dark. I start reaching for the snooze button, and then I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I stand up, and I'm like, that's weird.
Oh, my gosh.
I go on with my day. The next morning, same thing. I immediately remember it's dumb. I'm not doing it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I stand up again. It was the third morning, and look, I'm like you, somebody that I'm like super optimistic, but really resigned. You know what I mean? Like kind of skeptical, even though I'm really positive. Like, yeah, prove it. You know, like that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay. I start arguing. Okay, so you invented some stupid ass thing that helps you get out of bed. How the fuck is this going to pay off $1 million, right? And then I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're about to lose everything, woman. What do you got to, like, why not try it?
Right.
And so this was the simple thing I said to myself. Any moment today, I know what I should do, but I don't feel like it. Just count backwards, see what happens. I'll explain the science around this thing in a minute. So I walk into the kitchen, and there's my poor husband, Chris. Love of my life. We're celebrating 25 years married next week.
Congratulations.
Poor guy's standing there minding his own business looking for breakfast. And you know how that thing happens where you see somebody you love and you just want to kill them?
Yes.
You know? So there's Chris, and I'm like, and you know, here's the thing. I knew he wasn't trying to bankrupt us. I knew the man was working I knew he was full of shame and like scared and like felt so bad. And here's the other thing I knew. I knew I didn't want to get a divorce.
Okay.
I knew I didn't want to treat him like this. I was so triggered. And here's why. It is so much easier, Ed, to be angry than it is to be afraid.
And they're closely related, aren't they? But you checked the anger button. Yeah.
So I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that counting backwards, here's what it's doing in your mind. It is interrupting habit loops and emotional responses that get stored in your basal ganglia and run on autopilot and control your fucking life. And when you start counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the moment you start counting, you've made a decision to interrupt the pattern.
Oh boy, yeah.
And by the counting backwards, when you first start doing it, it engages your prefrontal cortex because it requires focus. By the time you get to 1, you have created a moment where you have taken control and you now can consciously choose what you think or do next. And so I used it every single day in secret to walk away from the bourbon, to pick up the phone and call insert network, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go out the door and exercise, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, don't snap at the kids, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed even though you don't feel like it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, tell the truth, reach out to friends, all the things. Because here's the thing, we all know what we need to do. We don't know how to make ourselves do it.
Do it.
So the 5-second rule, I never intended to tell anybody. You'll love this story. In 3 years flat, I go from unemployed to cold calling my way into a radio audition and getting a job at a digital marketing agency because we had bills to pay. And I end up with this little Saturday morning show that ends up doing really, really well in Boston, WTKK. And then it gets picked up by Cox Media, and I end up winning an award called the Gracie Award. And CNN calls, and they're like, we love radio hosts. We love how you talk about complicated topics like you're sitting at a kitchen table. We don't want Fox News to have you. You're in, woman. And so I became a legal and social commentator paid by CNN.
Incredible.
So my life is turning around. Chris and Jonathan are working day and night to get the business. They end up opening more units, and like, so that gets turned around. Our marriage gets better. I'm not in personal development. We still have liens on our house. Like, we're still like trying to figure it out. This is 2011. And somebody calls and is like, hey, your college roommate said you've changed your jobs a lot. Would you ever come give a talk about it at this thing called TEDx? I'm like, I've never given a speech before, but okay. I used to be a criminal defense attorney. I thought I can do this. Wow. This was the first TEDx conference. So there was no real major protocol, right?
Okay.
So I show up with my 20-minute speech and no prep.
No prep.
If you watch my TEDx talk,
I watched it.
You will see me having a 21-minute long panic attack on stage. If you look closely, I have a chest rash that comes on from anxiety.
Okay.
I'm darting all over the place. I forgot how to end that speech.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're really nervous. You forget the end. Yep.
And so I pause at the very end, because that was not about the 5-second rule. And I look out into the audience and I go, oh, there's this thing I do. I call it the 5-second rule. The moment you have an instinct to move,
come on,
you got to move in 5 seconds or your brain will kill the instinct to move. I was so disassociated, Ed, I gave out my email address on stage. And then I left. And I went back to my life at CNN and back to working hard with Chris to claw our way out of debt and prove our marriage and pay our bills. And I'm not kidding. We got the liens off our house just 3 years ago.
No.
And so a year goes by. So it's now 2012. People start messaging me on Facebook about the speech. And I'm like, oh, were you in San Francisco? They're like, no, I saw it online. I'm like, it's online? I didn't even know.
My gosh.
It gets 1 million views within a year. People start to now, 2013, ask me to come talk. I have no formal speech. I'm not even really talking about the 5-second rule all that much. Okay. I'm sort of mentioning it in this speech. It's starting to spread. I'm now up at night with a bottle of wine, answering emails from people in India and, Bali and the UK about, I've lost 100 pounds with this count backwards thing. Why is this working? And because I work at CNN, I can email somebody like Dr. Amen and say,
why is it working?
Yeah, can I interview you about this little brain hack?
Wow.
Is this not incredible?
That is incredible.
There is
I didn't know this.
Other explanation other than the universe or God said, this is something that needs to get out into the world, and this chick is the one who's going to do it.
Unbelievable.
Because I'll tell you what, it takes some very big balls to stand on a stage with 20,000 people and convince an arena full of people that you can change your life by counting backwards from 5.
I know, it's so simple.
And believe it with every fiber of my being. And so I now understand the science, but more than that, I have the real life stories of literally hundreds of thousands of people. And we know of 111 people who have not committed suicide because they have counted backwards. We know of veterans that are retraining their reaction to triggers associated with PTSD. Obviously, it does not regulate a dysregulated nervous system. It gives you a moment of control. It works with OCD. We have pediatricians using it with kids to interrupt the thoughts that cause anxiety. Over and over and over. The things that you know what you need to do. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a tool you can use in 5 seconds flat to interrupt the that's holding you back and push yourself to take the actions that change your life. One of the things that I learned in researching the book, The High Five Habit, which was freaking news to me, Chase, but once you have somebody unpack it, you're like, oh shit. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It is research from a woman who was at UCLA for a long time, one of the leading neuroscientists in the world. She studies the brain and what it takes for the brain to learn, to change, to create. And one of the things that she discovered is the connection between your nervous system and your brain's ability to function as it's designed. And to just really dumb it down, mostly for myself, this is how I've boiled down what she talks about. So your nervous system trumps your brain. And when you are in a state of stress or anxiety or uncertainty, and your nervous system gets locked into a fight or flight response, which is what everybody is in. There's no way. I mean, your wife may not be there because she is a expert in meditation. She's a practitioner. So she has daily practices that help her flip off what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, anxiety, on edge. Oh, fuck, how am I paying the bills? What's happening in politics? Gas prices are now crazy. When are we getting off Zoom? Are the kids going back to school? Do I have to wear a mask? Do I need a booster? Like all of that shit that you're processing that makes your nervous system fire up like alarm, alarm, alarm. That's your sympathetic nervous system. If you don't switch that sucker off and flip on the other nervous system, you got two nervous systems, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is your resting nervous system. It's your grounded, calm. It's the nervous system that's in play when you're in flow, being creative. It's what it feels like when you're grounded in your body and you're okay and you feel okay. And so what I learned from Dr. Judith Willis is that when your sympathetic fight or flight, oh fuck nervous system is running the show, your brain doesn't work properly because the alarm system takes over. And I can explain this using a very simple example. If all of a sudden the alarms went off in the studio that you're in and you smelled smoke, would you be able to solve a math problem? No.
No.
Of course
I'm
not.
out.
You're out. Well, that's basically what it's been like for the last 2 years. The fire alarms are going off and your body, your nose smells smoke. And so your nervous system flips on an alarm. The reason why it's so hard to focus, the reason why you're exhausted by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the reason why you feel like you're one more thing away from checking yourself in and needing help is because your nervous system is just fried and it's impacting your ability to think clearly. And so there's a simple trick that you can use. And I know you've talked about the vagus nerve a lot on your show. Mm-hmm. It's a really important thing to understand. It's a treasure inside your body. The vagus nerve is a nerve that runs all the way from, your seat through every major organ, your vocal cords, all the way up to the top of your head. And the vagus nerve is the on-off switch between your, oh shit, nervous system and your, I got this nervous system. And so a simple thing that you can do, and I want everybody to do this at the beginning of their day. And the reason why I want you to do it at the beginning of your day is because I guarantee you, particularly because you're in business for yourself, you're waking up on edge. Your cortisol levels, the stress hormone, are the highest first thing in the morning. And so when you wake up and you're already on edge, feeling like, oh my God, how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to pay my bills? You're rattled, you're thinking, you're worried, your cortisol levels are high. That means your, oh shit, nervous system, your alarm system is already ringing. So we got to flip the switch and turn off the alarm before you start your day so that your brain can focus and work for you. So the way you're going to do this, I call this high-fiving your heart. We're going to press in the center of your body, and that's going to kind of right by your heart, it's going to press on your vagus nerve. That's where the on-off switch is. And I'm going to teach you to manually flip the switch and to turn off the alarm system and to turn on the calm, grounded, creative nervous system that's going to help you get back into a state of flow and help you be more strategic, because right now is the most extraordinary moment in time for you as a business owner, I believe, and for a creator. So as you're pressing right here, you're just going to take a deep breath. Go ahead. And now I want you to say these 3 sentences. I'm okay.
I'm okay.
I'm safe.
I'm safe.
I'm loved.
I'm loved.
That's it. And most mornings, I need to do it about 23 times. No, I'm serious. Like what
I know,
happened?
but I love that about you though. Like you're like 23 times. Like no, like.
Well, you know when it's.
I know
when you can stop because you actually have a sensation of the rattle settling,
yeah.
and you come back into your body. And I didn't realize until I learned how to turn off the alarm and turn on that cool, rested state that my default for as long as I can remember, Chase, has been alarm mode. That I have been running so fast, mostly away from things, that I did not comprehend just how dysregulated my nervous system was. And, I think it's really challenging for creatives like you and me and everybody listening, and even if you're a small business owner and you don't consider yourself a creative and an artist, your business is your art. And sure. As a, small business owner, you're creating something. I didn't slowing down is terrifying when you're creative because there can be this manic, stressed out energy that's part of the creative process. And so it was very foreign to me during the pandemic to not be able to run somewhere. I mean, I literally could not go to get a cup of coffee or go to catch a flight or run to Target to run an errand, which I didn't realize was how I was kind of managing all of this dysregulated kind of survival mode energy. But learning how to stand in that frenzy, put my hands on my heart, and bring myself back into my body so that I could leverage the intense and incredible power of my brain and be strategic instead of reactive and be confident instead of chaotic. It's been life-changing. And so I believe that, look, will putting your hands on your heart take away your problems? No. It won't change the circumstances you're dealing with. But what it does is it changes you from the inside out and changes your ability to be calm and to be confident and to be clear-minded and intentional about how you face those things. And that changes everything.
Everything, because shit happens. Shit's going to happen. And it's not that we aim to prevent things from happening, but we take control of our response to those things, right? Whether this is stoicism or neurology or psychology, all of those things align to say that how we respond is the measure of greatness, right? That is how we become our best self. And
or sanity. I give you an example, Chase. We've been wrapping up kind of this big, book tour to the extent you can do one in these times. And I went over to London and we had an incredible, tour over in London. And I took my daughter with me and it was time to come home. And the regulations for getting any kind of international travel, at least right now at the time that we are filming this, are mind-blowingly complicated. And they're changing in real time. And some involve printouts and others involve apps. And so I found myself at 4:30 in the morning at the airport 2 days ago with my daughter, and we didn't have the right paperwork. And as soon as we learned we don't have the right paperwork, as soon as you start to entertain, I'm not getting out of this country. As soon as you learn that, oh my God, am I going to have to quarantine here for 14 days? Then can I get back in the country? And that whole thing happens when you allow the stress of your life or the stress of a moment or the uncertainty of something or the fear that you feel to all of a sudden surge through your body. You will not be able to solve the problems you're facing. And so literally at 4:30 in the morning at Heathrow, I got my hands on my heart as I'm huffing and puffing because I didn't download the app and I can't get back home and I don't want to stay here for another 14 days. And my daughter I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. My daughter's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm okay. And I bring myself back into my body. And then I start saying, what if it all works out? What if everything's okay? What if I figure this out? And I use the tools to come back into the moment, Chase, so that I can focus on what I need to do. And I'm telling you, if you're a small business owner and you are rattled and you are living with sustained stress, it's hand-to-hand combat with yourself in order to fight against the way that your body, your nervous system, your emotions can hijack you, and you can get control. And the more you use the tools that we're going to talk about, the faster and better you'll become at it.
You don't think that social media, though, has played such a screw up in people's minds because they're comparing constantly to other people?
Yeah. But, look, social media is a tool.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Too many people have allowed themselves to become the tool. And if you have an issue or a problem with comparison, stop being an asshole about social media to yourself. Go through your feed and get rid of every single account that triggers you. Mm-hmm. And fill your account with things that actually make you feel good about yourself, that are about where you're going instead of where you're not and where you're lacking. By doing that and curating your own feed to make you feel like shit, you are tripling down on the programming in your brain and making your brain believe, oh, it's important that I feel bad. It's important I see people skinnier than me. It's important that I see people that have more money than me. It's important that I see all these fake relationships online. It's important that I sit here in bed and before I even set my intention or do my morning routine, I spend 30 minutes self-loathing as I look at people's vacations and I make myself wrong about where I'm not. What the fuck are you doing? Seriously, get rid of those accounts on your feed. If you're unhappy, do something about it. Mm-hmm. And the fastest way to use social media for good is delete all the crap that makes you feel like horrible about yourself and start putting in things that reinforce the message that you are in control of your life. You can change your life. You can achieve your goals. You can be a happier person. You can heal your trauma. Absolutely. That is 1,000% in your control. You shouldn't be a robot about it. But nobody does. We all just kind of mindlessly consume it because that's how it's designed. But it can be an incredibly powerful tool for good if you're intentional about how you use it.
The curation is actually a very good idea, but people don't take that extra step to do that.
You have to. Unfollow Friday. Unfollow Friday. Every Friday, go through your feed and unfollow people.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and if you're like, oh, but my Uncle Joe is going to get annoyed if I'm... Mute him. Who gives a shit what your Uncle Joe thinks? Honest to God. Your social media is for you. Stop thinking about what you're broadcasting on social media and start thinking about what you're allowing into your mind.
That's a great one.
Look at the last 5 people you texted. Are those people helping you get where you want to go?
Are you asking me or just...
I'm just saying, there's a test you can do. Look at the last 5 people you texted. Look at the last 5 accounts you liked. Oh, Kim Kardashian, thanks a lot. She's an amazing businesswoman. Amazing businesswoman. Is she actually helping you get where you want to go?
Absolutely. I don't follow her, but I would imagine not. Yes.
Well, I don't know. For some people, maybe. For some people, not. Get serious about your life. Mm-hmm. At some point, you're going to die. At some point, this whole thing's over. And you're mindlessly walking through this and setting up your whole life to make you feel like shit. And you don't have to. That's the reason, by the way, why you can't stand in front of a mirror and high-five yourself. Because your whole life has been organized around making you feel bad about yourself. And I'm here to tell you, you can turn this around. You can change your social media feeds. That's number 1. Number 2, you can force yourself to try this stupid thing. Try it for 5 days. Mm-hmm. Do the high five challenge. Just go to highfivechallenge.com. You can sign up for free. It's super easy. High five yourself in the mirror for 5 days in a row and see what happens. So if you stand every morning and can't stare at yourself because you think you're worthless or whatever, and let's say you oversleep and you missed a dentist appointment. Who hasn't done that, right? Yeah. I certainly have. Yeah. If you're somebody that has good self-esteem, you go, oh, shoot, I missed the dentist appointment. I'm going to have to pay the $25 fee. I guess I'll just reschedule it, right? Mm-hmm. If you're somebody who has really low self-esteem, you go, see, you can't do anything right. You can't make it to the dentist. Everything in your life becomes evidence that you're a piece of shit. Everything in your life becomes evidence that you are doing things wrong. You see, the difference between me having done all this work on myself, therapy, EMDR, psychedelic guided therapy sessions, all of the high five habits, learning how to regulate my nervous system, dealing with childhood trauma. The difference between where I am now and where I used to be is I screw up shit all the time. I don't hook you're a piece of shit to it anymore.
I'm able to allow myself to screw up and go, good people do have bad days. I'm doing my best.
Right.
I'll just pay the $25 and reschedule.
Right. And you don't like hold on to it.
Correct.
Right.
Hold on to it. Most of us pour it all over ourselves. We just bathe in it. Mm-hmm. And so meaningful mantras, I should have called them pathetic mantras, you're right, are literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, interrupt that thought. I'm a bad person. Mm-hmm. I screw everything up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about it. And then you can insert something like, hey, I'm doing the best I can and I'm getting better every day. Hey, doing the best I can. I'm getting. That's not exactly like, woo, we're going to run the Ironman kind of talk. But meaningful talk is something you can believe.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I like that. Again, and then,
I can see your wheels turning. You're like, oh my God.
I am, because because it's so refreshing. And I really enjoy when people actually give you the hows, not just this is why it's happening and go on and on and on. But these are and this is in this book and in your other book, tangible. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, you want to get your mental health in order and you want to have better self-worth and self-love. Here's what you do. Stop sleeping with your phone so it's not next to you when you wake up. That way, when you wake up, you'll get out of bed and you won't look at social media.
Where do you put the phone? Do you keep it downstairs?
I charge it in my bathroom.
You do? Okay. So, and what time are you off? What time are you off the phone at night?
Depends on the day. I mean, I don't do what's called the gray zone. So the reason why people are so screwed up right now is because you're living in what psychologists call the gray zone, which is you're never not working, which is your phone.
That's true.
And never not, it's always on you. Mm-hmm. And so you never have a break. Ever.
That's true.
And there's no separation between work and life. And your life, there's not going to be balance, but there can be harmony and there can be boundaries. And so one of the things that I have that's really helped me, because I love what I do for a living. It doesn't even feel like work.
Right.
I could be on my phone 24 hours a day. I'd never see my husband or my children, but I could be on my phone 24 hours a day. I have a basket in the kitchen. So I use a lot of environmental triggers to help me cheat good behavior. So an example of an environmental trigger is a basket in the kitchen that has plugs at it. So when I get home, I put my phone in the kitchen. A lot of times you can't reach me because it's sitting in the basket. It's not on me.
Right. You can't see it.
Correct.
It's in the basket.
Correct. So keeping it away from you is really important, because here's the thing. You're never going to be successful if you're on your phone 24/7. Never. You're going to always be busy and mistake it for success. If you want to be wildly successful, you better get strategic and smart. And it is not smart to let this thing use you. You need to be the one using it. And so I put it in the basket in the kitchen when I'm home, because we don't have phones when we're having a family dinner. And it would, I just celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary. And thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the phone has been one of our biggest fights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just being distracted and not present with each other. So that's helped a lot. When I go to bed, it's in the bathroom. And for everybody that's worried because you're a single parent or you've got a job that you work a shift that you need to be available, no problem. Tell people, call me if you need me, and leave the ringer on. But tell them if you text me, I'm not going to respond. It's amazing. People will text you in the middle of the night, but they won't call you unless it's an emergency. So that way you ensure that you get a good night's sleep, because you're not sitting there going to bed watching it or scrolling through it. Then when you wake up and the alarm rings, you have to get out of bed because it's in the bathroom. When you walk toward the bathroom, you have enough presence now to know that you're going to turn it off and flip it over. And now you've got a fighting chance to have the first 30 minutes of the day be for you. You're going to brush your teeth. You're going to stand in front of the mirror, and you're going to have a moment with yourself where you're going to think about who you're going to be today. You're going to think about what's important to you today. And then you're going to raise your hand and you're going to high five yourself. And the other thing that happens, and why this is so powerful, in addition to the subconscious programming, I just spent a ton of time with Dr. Daniel Amen, one of the world's leading experts.
He was on
here.
Yep.
And he said he was so excited about the high five habit, not only because of all the stuff with neurobics, which is marrying neuroscience and neural pathways with aerobic activity. It's the fastest way to build new neural pathways, by the way. He was also super excited about it because when you cross a finish line, you raise your hands in the air. When the band that you love comes out, you raise your hands in the air. When you go to high five or double high five somebody, you raise your hands in the air. When you pat somebody on the back, you lift your arms in the air. The lifting, whether it's a high five or a fist bump or whatever, is coded into your nervous system as a positive rush. Remember how we talked about that anxiety rush?
Yes.
This is a positive energy force.
Right.
And so one of the reasons why it feels good, if you can push through the fact that it feels weird and you try it for more than 5 days, is because your nervous system starts to jump in. The other thing that happens is you get a drip of dopamine.
Yeah.
And that is why you suddenly feel a little lighter. You feel a little boost in your mood. You feel your shoulders drop. You feel like, okay, you know, my life sucks right now, but I got this.
Right. And then the whole thing is if you keep your phone in your bathroom and then you're not allowed to check the phone until you finish, or is it 30 minutes, or just you have to do the high five first?
Do what works for you. Like for me.
Don't you get stuck in the bathroom just checking your emails?
Absolutely not. You know why?
Why?
My mental health and my goals, my finances, my family, my dreams, way more important than what's on that fucking phone.
Right. So you don't check any emails for how long? For 30 minutes, you said?
I try.
What time do you wake up in the morning?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
My husband's up at like 5. I'm like, I'm doing 75 hard right now, so I'm getting up a little bit earlier.
You're doing what?
That challenge 75 hard.
What is that challenge 75 hard?
It's some...
Well, I guess I'm like out in the, I guess I have no idea.
Amy's doing it too. We got roped into it. My husband and my daughter are doing it.
I've heard of it actually. But
it's 75 days. It's very male. Like I've decided I'm going to come up with something called like 21 days easier.
Oh, I think is this the
like
one that Jesse Itzler's doing? No, that's not.
I have no idea.
Okay, no.
But it's like 2 45-minute workouts a day. One has to be outside.
I did hear about this actually.
Gallon of water. You have to stick to a particular diet of your choosing. No alcohol. 10 pages of nonfiction. What else do we have to do?
So you have to do 240.
Workout. Read. Water. Oh, progress photo. And you've got to do it 75 days in a row. And if you miss one day, you're out. You got to go back to 0.
So is it too late to start?
You can start anytime you want. It's not like a thing. It's like a thing you do yourself or with a group.
2 45-minute workouts a day. Can it be anything?
I walk my dog. Check.
For 45 minutes?
Check. Yeah, I'm into winning. Like, I don't know about everybody else, but this is the other thing. I have been like, and the high five habit is not for losers because we very wildly successful people, we tend to harp on the things going wrong. You will have so much more success and more joy and be a better leader if you are able to laser focus and celebrate the things going right.
But how do you teach that really?
You stand in front of a damn mirror
and you do the high five.
Yes.
So okay,
I know you do not want to believe it. I know.
I do believe it. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna join the challenge. How about that?
You can do this. Yeah, do the high five challenge. High five challenge. 5 million people. 5 mornings in a row.
Okay.
It's hosted by Growth Day. I think the word discipline is scary.
I think it's very scary and it's very difficult.
Intimidating. And so I prefer to practice what I call simple discipline.
Okay, what is that?
And we're already writing a book on it, so nobody can steal that idea, right? Because I saw your eyes light up.
Yeah.
No, it's literally that you can create discipline in your life by doing 2 45-minute workouts, one of them outside every day. You can also create discipline in your life by getting up when the alarm rings.
Like small wins.
Making your bed. I also lay my exercise clothes out in my closet, which I have to walk through to get to the bathroom. It's like a trap on the floor.
Yeah. I get it.
If I step over it, I'm basically going, screw you, Mel. But by laying it out, I am able to exercise the muscle of simple discipline. It's an environmental trigger. It's right there. I'm reminding myself and I pull it on. I walk into the bathroom. I stand in front of the sink as I'm brushing my teeth. And I set an intention for the day. And I raise my hand and high five myself as a way to practice simple discipline, as a way to show myself support and love and celebration, no matter what I'm facing in life, the good and the bad, as a way to be present, as a way to send myself into the game of life with a little bit of momentum behind me instead of feeling like I'm dragging a freaking boulder behind me. Another way to practice simple discipline is drinking a half a gallon of water a day. Another way to practice simple discipline is to put your hands on your heart whenever you feel your nervous system going up. You could be in the grocery store and some jerk
cuts you off and grabs the last box of the Bolo granola, and now you're all angry because you wanted it. You feel it up, just like, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. Like those sort of little things that flood your nervous system are ruining your life because none of us realize how much your nervous system being dysregulated. I can see it. You're getting emotional. Why?
Oh, no, I'm not getting emotional. I just like, I totally
You have this
agree
look in
with
your
you.
eyes where your eyes get really like beautiful and watery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's just natural. Cause I'm just actually agreeing with so many things that you're saying. And I'm really big on, and what I do a lot is I do what you do. I put certain things in my day to make sure they happen because I know that I don't like to drink water. So then I won't allow myself to get out of bed until I drink a huge glass of water.
Now look, I've only really practiced this for a day.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly the world's best expert at this. And this wasn't even my idea. My husband knows that with my ADD and dyslexia and dysgraphia and everything else under the sun that you can put a label on, that me getting a gallon of water into me is going to be a challenge. And so he basically said, you've got to drink 2 16-ounces before you have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
And so that little hack has helped me a lot.
But you also, for someone who has no...
For a day. I'll let you know tomorrow how it's going.
Or yes, I'm going to check in with you.
But I'm traveling. I mean, like
That's
I was
the thing. You travel a lot.
Where were we yesterday? Utah. I was in Salt Lake yesterday. We're in LA today. We're in San Francisco tomorrow.
So how do you stay how do you stay
disciplined?
on point?
I make my bed in a hotel.
You do?
Yes, because you want to be who you are no matter where you are.
That's true.
You want to be who you are no matter who you're around. So if I'm somebody that always wakes up when the alarm rings, I don't set my alarm for the same time every morning. That's why I stumbled when you asked me that question.
Yeah, I was going to say, so
Here's
what time
why.
around?
I sit, before I go to bed at night, I think about my day. And I go, when do I need to set this for so that I'm supported in the morning? This morning is the perfect example of me doing a terrible job at that. Because I thought to myself, oh, okay, well, I've got my first thing at 8 o'clock. I've got to get in a 45-minute workout. I forgot the fact that I'm going to want to have a cup of coffee. And the fact that I've drank 32 ounces of water means I'm going to spend more time in the bathroom.
100%.
I also discounted the fact that we're here in Los Angeles and my daughter goes to the Thornton School of Music at USC. And she was going to be swinging by, coming from a party at 1 o'clock in the morning, which meant that I was going to then stay up and talk to her. And then that meant that I would wake up extra tired, which means I probably needed a half an hour longer than I did. Wow, and so I kind of screwed myself over by setting my alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right, but you reverse engineer your day.
Yeah, I do. And so every day it's different. And normally I'm really good because I put in the time to have about 15 minutes of just kind of flex time to get from my bedroom out into the kitchen or wherever. I always exercise in the morning if I can.
And what do you kind of exercise besides walking the dog?
If I have no time, I drop into a 2-minute plank. Or I'll use a Tabata app and do the kind of 20, 15 for 4 minutes.
Okay.
Or I can now do jumping jacks because I've had bladder surgery. So even jumping jacks for 2 minutes.
You could do them now.
Yeah, I can do them now.
Okay, good.
After 3 kids, it was kind of an issue.
Yeah.
And then, but if I have time, I always either do a stream a yoga class or I go for a hike. I don't really run anymore. I'll go for a power walk. I will jump on a Peloton. That kind of. I love bar class.
So do you have like a time? So it doesn't matter what time, as long as you do some form of activity.
I like to try to get done in the morning.
Because how long? Like do you try to do like a 45-minute? Doesn't matter.
If I actually walk into the studio, I win.
Yeah.
I mean, most yoga classes are an hour. Most bar classes are 50 minutes. But I used to never be somebody. I've practiced yoga for 20 years. Never once laid out a mat at home. And the pandemic changed my life. So I now barely go to a yoga studio because I can then just stream it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you do that every morning before. Do you that? That's a non-negotiable for you, right? You exercise.
If I don't do it if I don't get a yoga class in, I will do a plank or I'll do abs. And
just a plank for 2 minutes, and then that's enough.
That's enough for me.
Okay.
I mean, it might not be enough for you, but I mean, that's pretty freaking hard.
No. 2 minutes is a great plank. I'm just saying, like, so it's about work. When you said working out,
and it didn't start with like it was 2 minutes with the knees on the ground.
No. I know. I didn't say. I know, but I was saying that. So
here's the thing. I love keeping my word.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that trips everybody up.
Yeah.
Is you say, I have to have an hour
plus 15
That's
minutes
right.
commuting time each way. Imagine how much your life would change if you literally ratcheted that down to, I need to walk outside for 10 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
And you do that every day for a month. And you just experience the life-changing magic of keeping your promise to yourself and having a little bit of simple discipline in your life. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.